Chapter 1597. 1. Lost. In the fog where the chi of heaven and earth and star source energy intertwined, a human figure appeared. His body was bathed in blood, and there were countless wounds on his body. When the small wounds gathered together, it was incomparably terrifying. It was as if there was not a single piece of skin on his body that was intact. His aura was extremely weak. His face was pale and powerless. His hands were hanging in the air without any strength. Only his right hand still had the remnants of the illusory spear. Unfortunately, his strength could no longer be gathered. It was Lin Feng. It was hard to imagine that with such a heaven-defying physique, he could still be injured like this. In fact, if not for his strong physique defense, Lin Feng would not have been able to last until the last moment. Time and time again, he was injured, recovered, injured again, attacked again and again. Facing the pressure of survival, facing the desperate situation, facing his own promise, facing the safety of the southern region, at the last moment when he was on the verge of death, Lin Feng erupted. Cloudfall. I did not expect to comprehend it at this moment. Lin Feng looked ahead. He could vaguely see the existence of the Tao of space, but there was no longer Witch Emperor Zhang's aura. He was very clear that he was dead. The strongest person in the Douling world was killed by him. He did not think of killing him, but at the last moment, it was not up to him. The victory and defeat of the strong were usually just a hair's breadth away. It was so close that the one who died today was him and not Witch Emperor Jiang. This strong person who stood at the peak of the Douling world was not only cautious and astute, his strength was also extremely terrifying. He was more or less lucky to be able to win. Fortunately, I have been comprehending Cloud Fall for the past half a year, but I have not grasped its essence. Lin Feng smiled weakly. If Cloud Rise was said to be at the beginning, Cloudfall was said to be at the peak of life. One thought to go to heaven, one thought to hell. Which Emperor Zhang's ultimate move made him face the true despair of death. Just like the essence of Cloudfall, he finally comprehended it. Speaking of which, he had to thank him. The stronger the opponent, the more powerful the user would become. Which Emperor Jiang? Lin Feng muttered softly. He had a sense of respect for this strong person who stood at the peak of the Douling world. No matter what, he did his best for his race. From his standpoint, he did not do anything wrong. Shaman Emperor Jiang was indeed a great leader. Only when they truly fought and fought to the death would they know how strong he was. Based on his comprehension of the Tao of space alone, Yang Kai was certain that as long as he was willing, breaking through to the starry sky realm was just a matter of time. The reason why he hadn't made a breakthrough might be because he had a greater goal. It might also be because he was tied down by his clan and was unwilling to leave. But no matter what, the outcome could not be changed. Unfortunately, we are on different sides, Lin Feng murmured. His gaze landed on the spot where the Witch King Jiang fell. 3 rays of light flashed. Sky Arc, Lin Feng muttered to himself. With a weak wave of his hand, he collected the Sky Arc. Among them, the most precious was undoubtedly the Heavenly Arc, which was ranked first among the heavenly treasures. And 9-floored golden brilliance pagoda, Lin Feng said softly. It was an exquisite and translucent 9-story pagoda that emanated a faint golden glow. Presently, it was an ownerless object. Number 1 on the Supreme Douling ranking. I have gained quite a lot. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. Obviously, the Witch King Jiang had many treasures. Sky Arc, 9-floored golden brilliance pagoda. What was the last one? Lin Feng was quite curious. In an instant, he collected the last one. It was a strange black model that looked like a door. It was extremely strange. This is... Lin Feng frowned slightly. He carefully recalled the information in his mind, but he did not have any impression of it. On the Supreme Douling ranking, there was no such existence. But for an existence like the Witch King Jiang to carry it with him, it was obviously an extraordinary object. It was probably an existence of the same level as the 9-floored golden brilliance pagoda. Ordinary, innate treasures that had been refined by the Witch King Jiang would most likely die along with his fall. But this model of the Black Door was intact. I will go back and study it. Lin Feng thought to himself. He kept it and looked into the distance with a hint of anxiousness in his heart. His hands flashed, and 2-star fruits appeared in his hands. In fact, after a short period of recovery, his body had regained the ability to move. It was just that his combat power was still weak. Of course, this weak was compared to his original strength. Gulp. Lin Feng swallowed and refined them without hesitation. The 2-star fruits were both of the best. They could heal injuries extremely quickly and restore a certain amount of strength. They were priceless in the Douling world. But to him, it was far less important than the situation of the war. He only needed to appear, and he did not even need to use any strength to raise the morale of the Southern Region army. On the other hand, the Sorcerer Tribe army was in chaos. Because the Witch King Jiang had fallen, this was a disaster for the Sorcerer Tribe. The Southern Region has won this battle. A ray of light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. The rich power of the heavens and earth spread out from his chest and flowed throughout his body. From now on, the Douling world will have one more powerful force. Lin Feng's gaze was as firm as a spear. The death of the Witch King Jiang would definitely shake the entire Douling world and even affect the situation of the Great War of the Sorcerer Tribe. From his standpoint, he naturally did not want him to die. But now that he had killed him, there was no point in regretting it. No matter what, his combat power had reached the peak of the Douling world. The Southern Region also had strong combat power. He believed that neither the Sorcerer Tribe nor the Demon Tribe would dare to underestimate the Southern Region. The Southern Region would truly rise. As for the future, he would deal with whatever came his way. What was there to be afraid of? In a wasteland world, a region that was shrouded in fog all year round. It was at the bottom of the abyss. There was no aura, and it was the most secretive place in the Douling world. It emitted a poisonous fog. Any martial artist below the saint level would die if they touched it. The illusory array at the bottom of the abyss could even make a sage king lose his sense of direction and fall into a trap. This was the headquarters of the largest force in the Douling world, Extremity, the Dual Polarity Palace. Located in the middle of the Dual Polarity Abyss, the Dual Polarity Palace was divided into the South Polarity Palace and the North Polarity Palace. The South Polarity Palace was in charge of handling the large intelligence network of the branch. It was in charge of earning money, diplomacy, and other external affairs. It could be said that the South Polarity Palace was the body of Extremity. It was the strongest and the largest body. It was also the most well-known part. But the root of Extremity, the soul, was not in the South Polarity Palace, but the North Polarity Palace. Unlike the bustling scene of the South Polarity Palace, the North Polarity Palace seemed to have melted into the ice and snow. The door of the palace was closed all year round. No martial artists could be seen coming in or out. It was like a desolate land. But that was not the case. The North Polarity Palace had the strongest combat power of Extremity. From the talented martial artists below the saint level to the top of the sage king level, they all cultivated in the North Polarity Palace all year round. They did not care about worldly affairs, nor did they care about fame and fortune. They only cared about strength. As the largest intelligence organization in the Douling world, how rich was Extremity? There was no need to guess. The Yin Imperial City, Lulan Kingdom, Underworld, and other heavenly spirit forces knew that Extremity was much richer than the Sorcerer Tribe. But where was this large sum of money spent? One had to know that Extremity did not buy or sell shops, locations, and so on. Many martial artists guessed that Extremity's wealth had piled up into a mountain of treasures. Some martial artists guessed that Extremity used his wealth to support the development of heavenly spirits secretly. There were even martial artists who guessed that Extremity was a hoarder and exchanged his wealth for various treasures and inheritances. There were all kinds of theories, but in fact, Extremity's wealth was used to nurture martial artists. Martial artists of the North Polarity Palace, nurturing in secret just for the sake of rising up. Extremity's inheritance had been passed down for several generations. But every Extremity emperor of each generation was quite ambitious. They secretly accumulated power and waited for an opportunity. And when it came to Huang Jifu's generation, it was even crazier. Originally, Huang Jifu was a legend of his generation. When he was young, he was even more talented. He even had the ambition to challenge Sorcerer Emperor Jiang. But unfortunately, he failed in the end. Of course, such a genius would not be defeated so easily. Just like a treasured sword, failure only allowed him to sharpen himself, to understand himself more clearly, and to have a clear goal. After that, Huang Jifu disappeared. After he came out of seclusion, he became Extremity. In a short period of time, he rose to the top and became the leader of Extremity. He was already a legend. Inside the Palace of Extremity, it was located between the South Palace and the North Palace. It was the place where the Extremity Emperors lived and cultivated. Beep, beep. A crisp sound rang out. It was especially ear-piercing in this quiet Palace of Extremity. The green-clothed man who was sitting cross-legged in the cultivation room had an impatient expression on his face. He opened his eyes with a swoosh, and they shone with a sharp light. Just this aura alone was already extremely terrifying. Extremity Emperor, Huang Jifu. Back then, Huang Jifu was only slightly weaker than Sorcerer Emperor Jiang. Now his power was even more unfathomable. Top-level intelligence. Huang Jifu was slightly surprised. His communication compass was indeed activated, but only the North Hall Master and the South Hall Master could contact him. It was set to sound an alarm only for top-level information. Normal information would not disturb his cultivation at all. Turning on the communication compass, Huang Jifu looked at the message on it. His eyes widened, and his expression changed. With his power and power, he had seen all kinds of storms. There were very few things that could make him change his expression. But this time, Huang Jifu trembled. He was stunned. No, impossible. How could the old man die? How could he die? Huang Jifu roared furiously. His terrifying power spread out like a ferocious demon. He clenched his fists so hard that his veins popped out. His aura shattered the communication compass in the blink of an eye. Huang Jifu's eyes were bloodshot. He could not control his anger. What? Old man Dijiang, how could you be killed by a human? Why didn't you wait for me? He was furious. He was mad. The terrifying aura even made the Palace of Extremity shake violently. No one knew what Huang Jifu was feeling. He had always thought of Sorcerer Emperor Jiang as his only opponent. He wanted to surpass him and defeat him. But just when he was 90% sure that he could kill Sorcerer Emperor Jiang, he was suddenly told that Dijiang was dead. Just like that. What joke? This was the biggest joke in the world. Human? Lin Feng. Huang Jifu roared furiously. He looked like a furious lion. You're asking for death. Chapter 1598. Swish, swish, chi-chi. The sky was filled with divine beasts and ferocious beasts. There were thousands of them, and the number of divine beasts and ferocious beasts at the peak of the Saint Realm was more than 1,000. They roared and howled as they tore at the giant sorcerer tribe experts. The scene was no less spectacular than any beast tide. It was as if all the divine beasts and ferocious beasts in the Doling world had gathered. No, damn it, kill the humans. It's useless to kill these beasts. The sorcerer tribe army suffered heavy casualties, and the place was filled with wails and roars. They were more familiar with the astral treasure Qi than the monster race. Lin Feng had sold a lot of astral treasure Qi to the sorcerer tribe, but the quality was incomparable to the southern regions. Therefore, the sorcerer tribe experts were very clear on how to break the astral treasure Qi. Kill divine beasts and ferocious beasts. It was useless. As long as the humans who were compatible with the astral treasure Qi didn't die, as long as they still had astral origin energy, the divine beasts and ferocious beasts were endless. But so what if they knew? Surrounded by divine beasts and ferocious beasts, the sorcerer tribe experts couldn't kill their way out. Even if a few managed to kill their way out, the southern region's human experts were not to be trifled with. Among them, the strongest experts, Shi Juin and Shaman King Gomong, were tied down. They didn't have the strength to act as an arrowhead to break through the southern region's formation. The southern region had the upper hand in the current situation. The 5 human experts who were restraining Ashur, Join, and Shaman King Gomong contributed greatly, but the biggest contributor was her, Qian Lian Huang. She commanded calmly. Although she was young, she already had the demeanor of a great general. Not only did she lead the troops, but she was also able to advance and retreat freely, completely unaffected by the war. Every decision, every change in the battle formation was perfect, as if she was playing chess. In the eyes of the southern region's people, Wan Macho, Xiao Jian, and the other southern region's 5 experts were the most outstanding in this battle. However, among the experts who truly understood the Tao of war, the one who deserved the most credit was Qian Lian Huang. At first, I was a little worried. Sitting at the back, Shun Xiao smiled leisurely. His smile carried a sense of carefreeness. It had been a long time since he had felt like this. Feng really has a unique vision. Lin Xiaoyan's eyes were slightly bright, and he nodded. 2 deputy region masters. Overseeing the entire southern region, he had seen countless people and was very experienced. Qian Lian Huang's every move was under observation, especially Shun, who was proficient in the art of formations. If he were to personally lead the battle, he would not be any weaker than Qian Lian Huang. However, Lin Feng didn't make Shun the commander of this battle. Shun knew that compared to Qian Lian Huang, he was indeed lacking in that aspect. Killing intent, determination. Lin Xiaotian looked at Qian Lian Huang's back and said softly, "This child and Feng are a match made in heaven." Shun smiled and nodded, without any hint of jealousy. As the eldest disciple of Emperor Yao, he had nurtured countless human elites. Even though King Lu, who had always been at odds with him, had now become a saint king, he still sincerely congratulated him. In Shun's heart, there was no such thing as himself. There was only the entire southern region, the entire human race. True benevolence and righteousness. This is only her first battle, and she has already shown her talent. Although there are still some flaws, it won't affect the overall situation. I believe that in time, Qian Lian Huang's ability to lead the army will surpass that of the Witch Emperor. I originally thought that this little girl was only intelligent and had a strong talent for understanding, but I didn't expect that she would be able to comprehend other things by analogy. No matter what, she is a dragon among men. Even when it comes to marching and fighting, she is not inferior to men. Shun sighed softly. Indeed, she is worthy of being a rare genius of our human race. Lin Xiaotian nodded and looked into the distance, his eyes flashing slightly. The war had been going on for a long time. What he was most concerned about was not who would win the battle between the southern region and the witch tribe, but his son. Don't worry, there will be no problem. Shun looked at Lin Xiaotian and smiled, but there was a hint of reservation in his smile. Lin Feng was facing the witch Emperor Jiang. His fame spread far and wide, and he was worthy of being called the #1 expert in the Douling world. Not long ago, he had defeated the demon commander. How powerful was he? Although Lin Feng was a genius, he was still young. Even if he was a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers, but how could he not be worried? I only hope that Feng can return safely. Lin Xiaotian said softly. The journey was bumpy, and he had already seen through many things. Now, the most important thing in his heart was his family. Shun swept across the front, and his eyes were like torches with a hint of excitement. That's right. As long as Lin Feng doesn't die, the southern region will definitely win this battle. Although it is now a stalemate, with the Astral treasure puppet's power, the witch tribe will be defeated soon. Perhaps the southern region will pay a big price this time, but it's worth it. As long as Lin Feng doesn't fall, the southern region will rise. From today onwards, no one can underestimate the southern region and the human race. Clenching his fists, Shun's eyes were full of desire and power. Different from other young talents, he was an expert of the previous generation. He had experienced the 3 declines and 5 disasters of the human race. He had experienced the era when he was like an ant, and he could not bear to look back on it. The human race, who feared the demon race and sought refuge with the witch tribe like slaves, finally saw the light and could control themselves. What kind of progress and transformation was this? He, too, longed to see the rise of the human race, to see the human race become stronger. And now, hope was in front of him. Because of one person, everything had changed. Lin Feng, you must come back alive. Shun's eyes tightened, and he thought to himself. In his heart, the young man who used to be like a child was now respected and respected from the bottom of his heart. He had become the well-deserved human emperor. The two deputy region masters, who were high and mighty in the southern region, were waiting anxiously in their hearts. In fact, every expert of the southern region who participated in the battle had the same obsession in their hearts, to kill the enemy without caring about their own safety. They knew how powerful which Emperor Jiang was, and they knew how powerful the southern region was. Fang Ning, Little Jian, Wan Macho, Jin Ji, and Shi Zhixin, the five of them restrained the two witch kings. Although they had the upper hand, they could not kill them. Lin Feng, on the other hand, restrained the strongest witch Emperor Jiang alone. The witch tribe's biggest advantage was gone, and whether the southern region could win this battle depended on them. As long as they could defeat the witch tribe army, everything would fall into place. The witch kings and even witch Emperor Jiang would retreat, and the southern region would win this battle. Kill. Go to hell, witch tribe. For Emperor Lin, the experts of the southern region charged crazily, and under the command of Thousand Love Empress, they went all out. The momentum was already there, and they could not let the witch tribe army turn the tables. Now, they did not have to care about the price, and the right way was to defeat the witch tribe army. After all, the Astral treasure puppet consumed a lot of star source energy. If this dragged on, the southern region would be in a worse situation. And now it was the peak. Hold on. You must hold on. Yes, the humans are already powerless. As long as we hold on, we will win. The great witch emperor will come to save us. The witch tribe army also exploded with unprecedented cohesion. This cohesion did not need to be stimulated, nor did it need any mobilization, because it already existed in their hearts, and that was witch Emperor Jiang. No matter how bad the situation was, no matter how desperate the situation was, in the hearts of the witch tribe experts, as long as witch Emperor Jiang was there, they would be able to turn the situation around, or even turn defeat into victory. An intense battle. The war had truly reached its fiercest moment. Whether it was the experts of the southern region or the witch tribe army, they were all in a killing frenzy. The balance of the battle was unstable, and they were waiting for the last bargaining chip to be pressed down to decide the difference in strength between the two sides and to decide the final outcome and fate of the entire battle. Boom! In an instant, an incomparably terrifying power filled the sky. Even in the most intense battlefield, with the deafening sound of killing, the appearance of this power was terrifying enough to destroy heaven and earth. It was high and mighty. It was a human, wearing an extremely ordinary black martial robe. He held a long spear in his hand, which emitted a ferocious indigo light. Astonishing spear chi spread out in all directions, condensed with boiling, killing intent, and the power of heaven and earth exploded. His eyes were as dazzling and bright as the stars hanging high in the sky. But the most shocking thing was that in his left hand, he held an existence that made all the experts of the witch tribe speechless. Sky Arc, witch Emperor Jiang's most precious treasure. It had once defeated the commander of the demon tribe and repelled the demon tribe army. It could be said to be witch Emperor Jiang's proudest and most powerful weapon, but now it had fallen into the hands of this human youth. Witch Emperor Jiang is dead. Lin Feng's eyes were bright, and he raised the sky arc and shouted. The clanging sound was like thunder, and in an instant, the entire witch tribe army was stunned and tongue-tied. What a joke! Their great witch emperor was dead? How could he die? How could he die? No, impossible. Human, don't you dare lie. In an instant, angry voices rang out in the witch tribe army. However, this was only a small portion of them. Most of them were in panic, fear, and terror. It was as if a mountain that had always been protecting them had collapsed in an instant. Their screams were shrill, and the army of the shamans was instantly thrown into chaos. They clearly knew about the battle between Lin Feng and Witch Emperor Jiang. Originally, Lin Feng's short sentence was not enough to disturb their hearts, but Lin Feng held the sky arc in his hand. That was a heavenly treasure that was perfectly compatible with Witch Emperor Jiang. Now that it had fallen into Lin Feng's hands, what did it mean? Every expert of the witch tribe might not be willing to admit that Witch Emperor Jiang had fallen, but the truth was the truth, and it could not be changed. Even if Lin Feng created chaos to disturb the army's morale, where did the Witch Emperor go? If he did not even want the Sky Arc, why did the Witch Emperor not appear? As long as one thought about it, the mystery would be solved. There was only one answer. Witch Emperor Jiang had fallen. Chapter 1599. The army of the sorcerer tribe was not the only one who was shocked. Shun and Lin Xiaotian, who were at the back, were completely stunned. Even Qian Lian Huang, who was commanding the army calmly, was surprised. All the experts of the Southern Territory were flabbergasted, and they were shocked by this sudden news. Sorcerer King Jiang was dead. He was the deity of the sorcerer tribe who had experienced the Great War of the sorcerer tribe. He was the strongest person in the Douling world. Was he killed by Emperor Lin? Was it true? In the 9 continents of the southern region, Lin Feng's figure appeared in every sky. The news of sorcerer Emperor Jiang's death was like a bolt of lightning that struck the hearts of every citizen. Their mouths were wide open for a long time. Even the most ordinary people knew of sorcerer King Jiang's existence. He was the emperor of the Douling world, the leader of the sorcerer tribe. He was dead. The entire southern region became extremely quiet in an instant. It was as if there was no sound in the world. The news was too shocking. But boom, the entire southern region was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes were shining with excitement. They shouted crazily, even if their throats were broken. They hugged each other passionately and were overjoyed. Some of them even shed tears. They knew what the news meant. The most important thing in a war was undoubtedly the general of an army. With a marshal around, a dragon could not do without a head. Sorcerer King Jiang was not only the general and the general of the sorcerer tribe, but also the real dragon head. He was the spiritual symbol of the sorcerer tribe, the source of power, and even the sky of the sorcerer tribe. But at this moment, the sky had collapsed. Could the sorcerer tribe survive? The answer was obvious. Kill. Kill these trash. Go to hell with their sorcerer king. The experts of the southern region went crazy. They killed and attacked crazily. They unleashed all their power. At this moment, they felt as comfortable as a massacre. They did not need to use any energy because the sorcerer tribe army had lost their will to fight. They fled in panic. Every expert of the sorcerer tribe fled as if they had lost their souls. Sorcerer King Jiang was too important to the sorcerer tribe. He was so important that it had penetrated into the bones of every expert of the sorcerer tribe. Following Thousand Love Empress's orders, the experts from the southern region slaughtered the experts from the sorcerer tribe with ease. The balance of the war was completely tilted towards the southern region. Even though the slaughter continued, even though blood continued to flow, everyone knew the war was already over. The southern region had achieved a complete victory. Kill, kill, kill. The sorcerer tribe's army howled in agony. They had no power to fight back at all. They could only flee like walking corpses. The sky in their hearts had already collapsed. Even Shi, Jiuyin, and Gomong, the 2 shaman kings' eyes were gloomy and lifeless. In midair, Lin Feng frowned as he held the World Destroyer spear and Sky Arc in his hands. The victory of the war did not make him too happy because he knew very well that this was only the beginning of the war and was far from the end. The influence of the Witch Emperor River on the witch tribe is greater than I imagined. Lin Feng muttered to himself as he looked at the fleeing sorcerer tribe experts. He did not chase after them. In fact, with his current strength, even if he had less than 20% of his strength left, it would not be a problem for him to lock down one of the shaman kings. But Was there a need for that? It would only benefit the demonic race. The sorcerer tribe has lost their pillar of support and is on the decline. The situation of the Great Sorcerer Tribe War has reversed. The sorcerer tribe's defeat is inevitable. Lin Feng sighed softly in his heart. Pulling one hair would affect the whole body. Sorcerer King Dezhong's death was not a good thing for the southern region. However, in a battle of life and death, he could not control his strength. If Sorcerer King Dezhong had not died, he would have been the one to die. Since he had killed Dezhong, there was no need to think about it anymore. What he needed to think about now was what the southern region should do. What should he do? After the war ends, I will have a good discussion with Shun, Father, and Empress Lien. Let's see what the southern region should do next. Lin Feng said softly as he looked down. At this moment, Empress Qian Lian had already given the order not to pursue the enemy. The southern region's experts were also exhausted and did not overdo it. After all, even if they killed a few more sorcerer tribe experts, they would not gain much. The outcome of the war had been decided. No matter what, this war is won. Lin Feng smiled faintly. It's a good thing. The sky had collapsed. In the eyes of the entire Douling world, there was a great disparity in strength. It was even an insignificant war. The sorcerer tribe against the southern region was led by Sorcerer King Jiang and the 3 sorcerer kings. Regardless of whether it was the demonic race, the ancient race, or the alliance of the 8 major regions, the southern region's destruction was already destined. It was like an ant trying to shake a tree. However, the result was shocking. The southern region had won a great victory. The sorcerer tribe was defeated. According to incomplete statistics, thousands of martial sages had died. Although the sage kings had better survival skills, dozens of them had died. However, this was only a small injury to the sorcerer tribe. The real pain came from Sorcerer King Jiang. There were no signs, but he had died. The entire Douling world was in an uproar. Who would have thought that the supreme overlord of the Douling world, the deity who had experienced 2 wars with the sorcerer tribe, would be killed in a remote and backward human territory by a human who treated him like an ant? It was too unbelievable. However, this was the reality. Human Emperor. What a great human emperor. Human beings are really amazing. They amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Even Sorcerer King Jiang died in the hands of Lin Feng. How terrifying is Lin Feng's strength? The most powerful expert in the Douling world. I didn't expect this title to fall on the head of a human. It's ridiculous. There are all kinds of strange things in the boundless world. Human Emperor Lin Feng must be extraordinary. The ancient tribe, demon tribe, heavenly spirit tribe, and other neutral races were discussing and chatting in every region. The topic could not stray away from Lin Feng and the southern region that had transformed and risen in just a few years. Lin Feng was not the only one who could contend against the army of the sorcerer tribe. The entire war was dissected in detail, and all the forces were amazed by the tyrannical strength of the southern region. The improvement of their strength was simply rapid. The 5 generals of the southern region have different strengths, but the strongest is only at the Sorcerer King level. So what? Lin Feng alone can sweep away the Sorcerer King level experts. Look at the Sorcerer tribe. Even Sorcerer King Jiang did not dare to say a word when he was killed. Isn't that nonsense? The Sorcerer tribe has already suffered great losses. If they fight to the death with the southern region because of personal feelings, I'm afraid the demon tribe will laugh until their stomachs hurt. When the Sandpiper and the Clam fight, the result of this war between the Sorcerer tribe and the Sorcerer tribe is obvious. To be honest, the death of the Sorcerer King Jiang is not a big deal. The death of Sorcerer King Jiang and the rise of an even stronger human Emperor Lin Feng is actually not a big loss for the human tribe. Even so, after this battle, the Sorcerer tribe and the southern region have already become like fire and water. How can they join forces to fight against the demon tribe? They have teeth marks on each other. Even if they join forces, they will not be harmonious on the surface and will only be in chaos. Sigh. The situation is a little chaotic, but one thing is certain: the sky has really fallen for the Sorcerer tribe. The southern region was lively and jubilant. The streets and alleys were filled with joy. Every citizen had a smile on their face. The entire southern region was like a happy world. Defeating the visiting army of the sorcerer tribe and killing Sorcerer King Jiang was an honor for the southern region. Many citizens had experienced the years of being oppressed and enslaved by the sorcerer tribe. Today, it was as if the mountain that was pressing on them had disappeared. They were relaxed and free. The 9 continents were deeply immersed in that happiness. Even the experts of the southern region who participated in the battle were proud and excited. It was the first time the southern region went all out and achieved such results. It was simply a miracle. However, at this moment, in the secret land deep in the peach blossom, the higher-ups of the southern region all looked solemn. Fang Ning, Xiao Jian, Shi Zhixin, Jin Ji, and Wan Macho stood out in this battle and were known as the 5 great generals of the southern region. Qian Lianhuang and Shun were known as the 2 marshals of the southern region. In addition, King Yin, King Lu, and a group of old officials were gathered together. The atmosphere was slightly depressing. There was no joy after the battle, only an unfathomable future. Where should the southern region go from here? What are you afraid of? Just stand out. With the current strength, courage, and confidence of the southern region, what is there to be afraid of? King Yan's eyes were like fire, and he was full of fighting spirit. He had always been in the war camp and was never afraid of fighting. Defeating the sorcerer tribe especially made him confident. What is there to be afraid of? King Lu snorted disdainfully. Not to mention the demon tribe. Even if the sorcerer tribe sends half of their forces to attack us, they will be able to flatten the southern region. King Yin frowned slightly and raised his head. A plate of loose sand is not a threat. King Lu sneered. A desperate army is bound to win. How can we underestimate the enemy, especially one of the 2 most powerful tribes in the Douling world? King Yin looked at King Lu with fire in his eyes. He shouted, "We can't do this, we can't do that. Are we just going to wait and do nothing? What's the point of hiding? Now that King Lin is in charge of the southern region, I don't believe that the sorcerer tribe dares to challenge us. I say that the sorcerer tribe is already scared out of their wits. If they wanted to take revenge, they would have acted long ago. That's not the case," Shun said, his eyes shining. The demon tribe's morale is already low and their vitality has been damaged. Coincidentally, they have come across this great opportunity. Now, they are mobilizing their forces and ready to take action. The sorcerer tribe does not dare to act rashly. It is better to stay put than to take action. However, it is undeniable that the sorcerer tribe hates the southern region to the core. I just don't know if the sorcerer tribe hates the demon tribe more or the southern region more. Everyone nodded. Shun's words hit the nail on the head. The current situation was far more complicated than before. If the sorcerer King Jiang had not died, the southern region would be in a much better situation. After this battle, the sorcerer tribe would definitely not target the southern region. They would even take the initiative to ally with Lin Feng to fight against the demon tribe. But now, the southern region was in a delicate situation. It was as if they were standing on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step, and they would be doomed eternally. Even Emperor Qian Lian frowned slightly. She could not think of a solution that would satisfy both sides. The southern region did not have the initiative. Suddenly, I have an idea. Lin Feng finally spoke. His eyes, which had been silent for a long time, shone with a faint light. Chapter 1600. Qian Lianhuang, Shun, and Lin Xiaotian all looked over, including King Yin, King Lu, and the other experts who were arguing until their faces turned red stopped instantly. Everyone's gaze was focused on Lin Feng. Perhaps Lin Feng wasn't the smartest one here, nor was he the smartest one. However, he was definitely the one with the most prestige and the most power. Most of the time, ideas did not depend on whether one was smart or not, but on one's vision and experience. Like a frog at the bottom of a well, no matter how smart it was, it could only see the sky above the well. However, to Lin Feng, he could see the entire sky. The more powerful one was, the more far-sighted one would be. Why should the sorcerer tribe be afraid of him? Lin Feng glanced at the crowd and said calmly, instantly shocking everyone. However, no one would doubt Lin Feng's words. It might be ridiculous for others to say such big words, but Lin Feng was a transcendent existence who could kill Sorcerer King Jiang in a one-on-one battle. Not only was he the strongest human, but he was also the strongest in the Douling world. Why should the sorcerer tribe be afraid of him? Since Lin Feng was able to say this, he naturally had his own confidence. If the sorcerer tribe dares to provoke the southern region again, Lin Feng's eyes shot out a ray of light, revealing his killing intent. I will kill my way into the sorcerer tribe and plunge the entire sorcerer tribe into endless fear. I will kill one sorcerer tribe and destroy one sorcerer tribe. We will fight to the death and destroy both jade and stone. Destroy one sorcerer tribe. Lin Feng's voice fell, causing everyone to tremble. If he said it, Lin Feng would naturally do it. It seems that we have been worrying for nothing. Shun suddenly smiled and shook his head. Although the sorcerer tribe is proud, they are not arrogant. Sorcerer King Jiang has been dead for some time, but they have not declared war on the southern region. They must be worried. It might not be entirely the demon tribe's credit. Lin Xiaodian nodded. I am a brick, but the sorcerer tribe is like jade. Everyone understood the gist of it. Indeed, the power of the sorcerer tribe far surpassed that of the south region. But so what? Even if the shaman tribe could wipe out Lin Feng with the combined power of the shaman tribe, what would be the result if Lin Feng was alone? Even if the 12 shaman kings joined forces, they would not be able to hold him back, let alone kill Lin Feng. It was likely that the entire shaman tribe would be plunged into an abyss of suffering. It was clearly not worth it to burn both jade and common stone. Coupled with the undercurrent of the demon clan, the shamans were even more hesitant. Without the planning of the military advisor, Lam Tok Ti, the demons are less scheming. Although they are more domineering, their overall strength has plummeted. Thousand Love Empress's beautiful eyes flashed. If Lam Tok Ti were still here, the monster race would be sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight instead of gathering their forces. Lin Feng nodded lightly. Times have changed, but the sorcerer tribe has suffered a greater loss after losing sorcerer Emperor Jiang. Unlike the demon tribe, although the sorcerer tribe has 12 sorcerer kings, they are comparable to demon emperor Kuei Tianyuan. However, there is not a single sorcerer king that can beat Yin Lei, not to mention that the demon tribe still has 2 commanders. Without Emperor Jiang, the decline of the shaman tribe is almost destined. If they are distracted and fight with the southern region, unless the successor of the shaman emperor is really blinded by hatred. In war, the overall situation was always the most important. Lin Feng was very clear about this. So what if he killed Di Jiang? Those shaman kings who had been scared out of their wits would not dare to take revenge. In the Douling world, whoever had the biggest fist would have the confidence. So Lin Feng, you want to... Thousand Love Empress looked at Lin Feng, her beautiful eyes flickering. She vaguely understood Lin Feng's thoughts. Their previous thoughts were too narrow. They had gone around and around, but they had not bypassed the shaman tribe. However, in fact, from a long-term perspective, there were still many ways to go in the southern region. My thoughts are very simple. Lin Feng glanced at everyone, and a faint smile appeared on his face. However, he did not stop until he said something shocking. Since the southern region can defeat the shaman tribe's army, since I, Lin Feng, have the title of the most powerful person in the Douling world, why should the southern region remain at the same place and be stagnant? Why don't we try to mess up the situation in the Douling world, build a force, or even conquer the entire world? Lin Feng's eyes were full of ambition, but it made everyone present dumbfounded. Was this a joke? Conquer the entire world? Lin Feng wanted to destroy the shaman tribe and the demon tribe. Even Fang Ning, who was always calm, was shocked. Even if Thousand Love Empress had some guesses, her mouth was wide open for a long time. She had thought that Lin Feng only wanted to take advantage of the situation and try to establish a foothold in the Douling world. Who would have thought that Lin Feng was so ambitious? This was too shocking. With the strength of the southern region, it was already difficult for them to protect themselves. How could they fight for supremacy with the shaman tribe and the demon tribe? Everyone, don't worry. I'm just exaggerating my goal. I don't really want to fight head-on with the shaman tribe and the demon tribe. Lin Feng smiled. Instantly, the frosty atmosphere eased up a little. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this, and only then did their hearts calm down. That scared me to death. Juan Macho could not help but shake his head. Indeed, this is too. Jin Ji's face turned bitter, and he did not continue speaking. Too unrealistic. King Yin frowned slightly. Although everyone knew about Lin Feng's strength, an individual's strength was not absolute in a war. Lin Feng was very powerful, but what about the entire southern region? Not to mention others, if the 2 demon commanders and the 4 demon emperors of the demon tribe joined forces, it would be enough to make Lin Feng suffer. With the help of the demon tribe's army that was far stronger than the southern region's army, it would be easy for them to destroy the southern region. On the contrary, it would be extremely difficult for the human experts to counterattack the demon tribe. The entire ocean was endless. Even the shaman tribe did not dare to counterattack in the second Great Shaman War despite having the advantage. Southern region, why? Although it's impossible now, it doesn't mean it won't be possible in the future. Lin Feng's gaze fell on the people who were discussing nonstop. He had a lot of trump cards. His doppelganger was already the strongest in the Douling world. If his main body made a breakthrough, his strength would be even more terrifying. In addition, his main body was a celestial spirit master and had the Pangu pupil. He was destined to be a super expert in group battles. In the future, his main body alone might be able to fight against an army. One must know that his flames were endless, and he was not afraid of consumption. Also, there were countless experts' corpses hidden in the Shield of Truth. Once all of them awakened, his strength would increase by another level. Most importantly, he had the Astral treasure chi, which could summon endless divine beasts and ferocious beasts at the peak of the Saint Realm. After countless refinements, his understanding of the Astral treasure chi's Tao had reached an extremely high level. If he could make a breakthrough in the Astral treasure chi's Tao, in the future, he could even refine a chi that surpassed the Heaven Realm. In the future, there would be too many changes. But what I said is not a joke. Lin Feng's gaze swept across the crowd and said seriously. He kept his smile, and with some pressure, all the experts of the southern region quietened down and their expressions became serious. Instead of entrusting our fate to others, why don't let us control it ourselves? Lin Feng's voice resounded. At this moment, the determination in his eyes were unprecedentedly strong. Chapter 1601. The weak were trapped by others and prayed to the heavens. The strong, on the other hand, could change the world, go against the heavens, and control fate. Not only did they control their own fate, but they also controlled the fate of others. Friends, clansmen, and even enemies, these are the truly powerful existences. For example, the great sage commander of the demon clan, Di Jiang, the strongest person of the wizard clan, and now, Lin Feng. Unify the Douling world? To Lin Feng, this was never his true goal. His biggest wish was to protect his family and reunite them. Next, he wanted to pursue his destiny and power. He wanted to reach a higher level, stronger power, and a higher realm. As for the Douling world, it was just a stepping stone, a step. With Lin Feng's current strength, if he wanted to live a carefree life, it would be easy for him to protect the kingdom of Meru. No matter if it was the wizard clan or the demon clan, they would not offend Lin Feng for a small island. According to Duo, with Lin Feng's improvement speed, it was only a matter of time before he broke through and became a starry sky expert. But many times, many things were not out of personal preference. To Lin Feng, the southern region and the humans were a kind of responsibility and an obligation that he could not escape from. Instead of going back and forth between the wizard clan and the demon clan and dragging out an ignoble existence for the humans, it was better to fight a big fight with a small one. Even if he lost, he did not have to care. The human forces spread across the entire Doling world like weeds in the spring breeze. What could be worse than the previous situation? Although the human population was large, they were in fact controlled by the wizard clan and were enslaved. What was the point of living like this? Fong Ning, Xiao Jian. Lin Feng glanced at the two of them, and his eyes lit up. Yes. Fong Ning and Xiao Jian responded. Although they were like brothers with Lin Feng, their personal feelings were one thing. In public, they were Lin Feng's subordinates and could not overstep their boundaries. If they called each other brothers, where would their prestige be? How would Lin Feng control the entire southern region? With Fong Ning as the commander and Little Jian as the deputy, you will lead the southern region's army. Lin Feng's expression was calm, but there was a hint of fighting spirit in his voice. Let's go to the 8 great domains. Whoosh! Lin Feng's voice caused an uproar. Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Although they were surprised, they were not really surprised. In fact, the strength of the Nanfang region had been able to sweep through the 8 great regions of the human race a long time ago, unifying the 9 regions and connecting them into one. However, Lin Feng had always kept a low profile and did not want to expand his power. There is no need for further explanation, as everyone understood what this meant. Lin Feng wasn't joking. He really wanted to unify the Doling world and achieve something great in this chaotic world. Conquering the 8 major human domains was only the first step. He wanted to unify the human forces and develop them together. It was true that the other 8 territories were not as powerful as the southern region, but the southern region used to be like that as well. Many things depended on human effort. Since Lin Feng could reform the southern region, he could naturally reform the other 8 territories and make them stronger. After all, the human race had accumulated a strong foundation after countless years of development. The number of races and the power of understanding were the best in the entire Doling world. It was not luck that the southern region could produce so many powerful people in such a short period of time. It was due to their accumulation. As long as the other 8 territories had enough time, they could also soar to the sky. This was Lin Feng's decision. Since he had to fight, then he would fight to his heart's content. In the Imperial Garden, Grandfather, Lin Feng walked over with a smile. Oh, with a faint smile on his face, Feng Chao looked at Lin Feng with burning eyes. He put down the teacup in his hand and said, Feng, do you seem to have something important to discuss with me for a late-night visit? Lin Feng smiled and nodded. He did not hide anything. His grandfather was his closest relative. He did not need to say anything against his will in front of his relatives. As long as he asked, his grandfather would not refuse him as long as it was within his power. There is one thing that no one else can do except for Grandpa. Lin Feng's eyes glowed with passion. Let me guess. Feng Chao lightly raised his eyebrows and smiled. With Fenger's current strength and status, it's easy for you to do whatever you want. Grandfather's meager strength is naturally unable to help you much. The only thing that can be considered valuable should be identity. Feng Chao relied on the clan leader of the ancient Phoenix clan, the few surviving powerful people of the Phoenix clan and the southern ancient region, and his network of connections in the 7 major ancient regions. Feng Chao dared to offend the deity hall that day. If he was not confident, how could he put his entire clan in danger? The rumors outside are abuzz. They say that you are unwilling to stay in seclusion and have already sent troops to the 8 great regions of the human race. Do you want to expand the borders of the southern region in one fell swoop? Feng Chao looked at Lin Feng, and seeing his nephew nod in acknowledgement, he smiled in satisfaction. It's not a bad thing for a man to be ambitious. A soldier who doesn't want to be a general is not a good soldier. Not to mention that you have genuine strength, more than enough to rule the entire human territory. After saying that, he muttered to himself for a moment, then looked at Lin Feng with a bright light. So, Feng, came here this time, hoping that this old man, will be your lobbyist? Yes, I'll have to trouble Grandfather. Lin Feng bowed his head and replied without hesitation. After all, his grandfather was the leader of a clan. With his vast knowledge and experience, he could naturally guess what his goal was. Indeed, dispatching troops to attack and occupy humanity's 8 great territories was only his first step. Winning over all of humanity's elites, expanding the southern region's foundation. At that time, there would be even more good seedlings participating in the God-making plan. Saint-level experts would emerge one after another like bamboo shoots after the rain, supplemented with even more astral treasure puppets. It was enough to make up for the southern region's shortcomings. If quantity was insufficient, quality would replace it. At that time, every human expert would have a few astral treasure puppets, and it would be possible for one to fight against 3, 5, or even 10. But these were all plans for the later stages. Now, the southern region was relatively weak and could be wiped out by the demon race at any time, unable to grow. The battle strength of a race naturally could not increase by leaps and bounds in just a few days or months, but there was a way: alliance. Alliance, united against a common enemy. This was the most commonly used tactic in war. And to the southern region, the wizard race and the demon race naturally could not be allies. It was also difficult to rope in the various major forces that were secretly plotting. But there was one force that was not only powerful and had a deep foundation, but also had the origin of the same origin. That was the ancient race. Unifying the human territory is second, and allying with the ancient race is first. This is the future development goal of the southern region. I hope that grandfather will do his best to help. Feng is extremely grateful. Lin Feng bowed his head slightly and said softly, if they could rope in the ancient race as a strong ally, the southern region would have enough confidence to participate in this great calamity and even fight for the position of king of the fighting spirit world. The southern region had him, the strongest expert of the fighting spirit world, together with the ancient race's numerous saint-level and sage-king-level experts. It was enough to fight against the demon race. As for the wizard race, now, they were no longer a threat. Oh, Feng Chao muttered to himself and frowned slightly. It's a pity that ancient god Wu Feng has fallen. Otherwise, with his appearance, the possibility of this matter is extremely high. Although I have many good friends, most of them are clan leaders, elders, or even solitary experts of the ancient race, and so on. I don't have a deep relationship with the other 6 ancient gods and the temples. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and he understood what his grandfather meant. It was very obvious that the ancient race's affairs and foreign policy were decided by the 7 ancient gods and the temples. Just like the southern region's affairs, it was not the experts of the 9 provinces, but themselves. Every race had an existence equivalent to an emperor that decided everything. Man proposes, God disposes. Lin Feng nodded. At least there's a chance. Now that I'm the strongest expert of the fighting spirit world and have half of the ancient race's bloodline, I naturally feel close to the ancient race. Maybe the 6 ancient gods will consider it. There was still a possibility. Lin Feng knew that his greatest reliance was the blood flowing in his body, and half of it was from the ancient race. Perhaps the ancient race looked down on humans, and the temples had set up strict rules to prohibit humans from marrying the ancient race. But there were exceptions to everything. Now, that his strength was the strongest in the entire fighting spirit world, to the ancient race, this was not a humiliation, but a kind of pride. Moreover, the wizard race's strength had plummeted. Without the wizard King Jiang, if the ancient race wanted to maintain an alliance with the wizard race, they would definitely carefully consider whether it was worth it. The ancient southern region's destruction was an ironclad fact. The wizard race was definitely not a good ally. Since the start of the Second Great Magi-Demon War, they had put the ancient race in danger countless times and suffered heavy casualties. Lin Feng knew that if he were in their shoes, he would definitely be furious. However, for the sake of the overall situation, he had no choice but to swallow his anger. After all, the wizard race was defeated and the ancient race was also defeated. Previously, the ancient race did not have a choice and had to rely on the wizard race. But now they had a choice. It was just that they did not know if the ancient race would ally with the humans that they looked down on previously. After all, the ancient race's self-esteem even exceeded the wizard race. It was a rather proud race. Waiting. There was nothing to do. All Lin Feng could do was wait. His grandfather, Feng Chao, was definitely the most suitable lobbyist. If it succeeded, there was nothing he could do. He could only carry out the second plan, but it was far less effective than forming an alliance with the ancient race. He was sure that once the southern region formed an alliance with the ancient race, coupled with his reputation as the strongest expert of the fighting spirit world, the demon race would definitely not start a war with him in a short period of time. After all, the demon race hated the wizard race the most. Adding insult to injury was something the demon race was more than happy to do. Although the wizard race no longer had the wizard king Jiang, they still had their strength. Even if the demon race used all their strength, it would take at least a few years, or even more than a decade, to completely annihilate the wizard race. During this period of time, the southern region would be able to rely on the god-making plan to rule the entire human territory and produce countless saint-level and even sage king-level experts. The strength of the human race would increase greatly. At that time, the human race would naturally have a higher chance of winning. However, a plan was still a plan. Reality would not be so perfect. There were many things that could not be seen or guessed at the moment. He could only take one step at a time and adapt to the situation. Moreover, would the ancient race really agree? Chapter 16:02. 3 days and 3 days passed. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Although Lin Feng was patient, he was still worried. After all, the alliance with the ancient tribe was a serious matter. If it succeeded, it would undoubtedly be of great help to the southern region. However, there was no point in being anxious. During this period, the attacks of the 8 Territory Alliance had ended. In fact, after the southern region sent out their troops, the 8 Territory Alliance fell into a state of panic. What a joke! The southern region had defeated the armies of the demon and sorcerer tribes consecutively. Although they did not know what spell Lin Feng had used, there was no doubt that the southern region was really powerful. Fang Ning and Xiao Jian, the 2 generals, together with dozens of Saint King-level powerhouses, had wiped out the entire 8 Great Territories Alliance of the human race. It was as easy as blowing off dust. The so-called Great Army of the 8 Great Domain Alliance was defeated in less than 2 hours. They cried for their parents as they were killed. The remaining ones fled in all directions, wishing they had more legs. The sorcerer tribe could not even take care of themselves. How could they save the enslaved 8 Territory Alliance? At least the ancient tribe did not help. Lin Feng looked into the distance, his eyes twinkling. Although he had sent Fang Ning and Xiao Jian to lead the army, he and Qian Lian Huang were prepared to help at any time. It was better to be safe than sorry. The sorcerer tribe would not help, but the ancient tribe might. After all, the sorcerer tribe, the ancient tribe, and the 8 Territory Alliance were still allies. Qian Lian Huang received news that the ancient tribe Divine Hall received a message from the sorcerer tribe. They requested for the ancient tribe to send experts to help the 8 Territory Alliance. Lin Feng smiled faintly. In the end, the ancient tribe rejected them. The ancient tribe knew that he had killed the sorcerer emperor. The sorcerer tribe wanted to kill the ancient tribe with a borrowed knife. The ancient tribe was not stupid. In fact, the ancient tribe was very smart, much smarter than the humans. However, it was difficult for them to reproduce. They had too few people and their bodies were weak. If the ancient tribe could reproduce as well as the humans, the sorcerer tribe and the demon tribe would have to stand aside. However, how could everything go according to one's wishes? The longer we delay, the greater our chances. Lin Feng thought to himself, if the aboriginals really didn't have such intentions, they would have rejected him a long time ago, and his grandfather wouldn't have disappeared without a trace for an entire month. At present, the remaining 6 ancient gods of the ancient race and the shrines had conflicting opinions. They were discussing and hoping to reach a consensus. No matter what the outcome was, at least one thing was certain. A portion of the upper echelons of the ancient race supported the alliance. This was already rare and precious. Let's wait a little longer. Lin Feng let out a light sigh, but he was also very calm. The main body's opportunity is coming, so it still has a long time to cultivate. As for the doppelganger, Lin Feng's mouth slightly curved, and a dark black door model appeared in his hand. It was simple and had no energy aura. It looked like an ordinary object, but it was actually one of the 3 treasures he obtained from killing King Jiang that day. It was true that he didn't know the origins of this black door. It was extremely mysterious, strange, and peculiar. In fact, there are only a handful of people in the entire Douling world who knew the origins of this black door. However, Toto knew. Having followed Master through the starry sky world, Duodwa's eyesight was incredible. Spatial treasure, door of darkness. Lin Feng's eyes were clear. He held the black door with both hands and sat down cross-legged. Traces of heaven and earth power flowed in continuously, but the black door remained calm, as if nothing had happened. However, not seeing it didn't mean that it didn't exist, and it didn't mean that it didn't happen. In a unique space of darkness, it was mysterious and mysterious. Lin Feng had already entered a meditative state. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! Opening his eyes, Lin Feng let out a long breath. He looked at the door of darkness in his hand, and his eyes flashed. He was pleasantly surprised. As expected, of one of the 3 treasures left behind by King Jiang. Perhaps the Sky Ark is the most important to King Jiang, but to me, the Door of Darkness is the most useful. The Sky Ark belonged to the battle category. On the other hand, the Door of Darkness belonged to the cultivation category. Although the Sky Ark was powerful, it was limited to the battle spirit world. According to Toto, there were too many treasures on the same level as the Sky Ark in the starry sky world. However, the spatial treasure was extremely rare. It didn't need to be refined to be used. Its function was like a swordsman looking at a stone tablet engraved with sword intent. Tao comprehension, the Tao of mysteries, the Tao of origin. No wonder King Jiang's comprehension of the Tao of space is so terrifying. He has comprehended 3 Tao of space to an extremely high level. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows and thought. The comprehension of the Tao of space is 10 times or even 100 times harder than the origin Tao. However, the efficiency of comprehending the Tao of space and the Door of Darkness is simply terrifying. Now that I'm cultivating the Panga technique, the heaven and earth power is condensed, and my comprehension of the Tao of space is much stronger than before. In just over a month, my Tao of space disorder has increased from the 3rd level to the 5th level. This cultivation speed is simply heaven-defying. Lin Feng smiled. No wonder Toto said that he was extremely lucky. With this Door of Darkness, it was almost certain that he would become a starry sky expert. Just by comprehending the Tao of space disorder, he could directly become a starry sky expert in a very short time. He only needed to comprehend the Tao of space disorder from the 5th level to the 7th level. For others, it might be an insurmountable mountain, but for him, it was very easy. It was no longer an obstacle. The aptitude of his clone was terrifyingly strong. It had already reached the level of a starry sky expert. However, the stronger the foundation, the stronger the strength. Lin Feng nodded. If it was an ordinary Saint King realm expert, they would be overjoyed to be able to comprehend a profound Tao. It was quite difficult. Many Saint King realm experts were stuck at this stage and died depressed. They couldn't comprehend it until they died. According to Toto, if they could comprehend it, they would naturally comprehend it. If they couldn't, then they couldn't comprehend it. In terms of comprehension, humans are much stronger than the witch race and the monster race. It's a pity that the foundation of humans is weak. To reach the level of comprehension, there are too few. Even Saint King realm experts are rare. Standing up, Lin Feng pursed his lips. He had a feeling that the future of humans was very bright. Comprehension wasn't that important below the starry sky expert level, but as one's strength broke through to the star master level, star ocean level, it would begin to show its effect. Once one reached the saint level, Saint King level, it would be even more important. And after reaching the starry sky expert level, it would be close to an essential effect, an indispensable existence. If humans were given enough basic strength to improve, treasures, and so on, the number of starry sky experts that humans could reach will definitely increase exponentially. Accumulation isn't luck, it's true ability. Perhaps the witch Emperor Jiang was afraid of the endless potential of humans, so he deliberately suppressed humans and destroyed their spirituality. He even killed Saint King realm experts directly. The stronger one was, the higher one's vision was. Now, Lin Feng's vision was already set beyond the starry sky expert level. His vision was very sharp. There are two paths. First, use the Ursa major constellation to fuse the path of metal, path of strength, and path of space to break through. Second, like the witch Emperor Jiang, comprehend 3 paths of space, or even 4 or 5 paths of space to break through. Lin Feng's eyes were burning with ambition. Not only did he want to be the strongest person in the Douling world, but he also wanted to go further and longer in the starry sky world. According to Duo, what was the harm in staying a little longer in the reserved starry sky warrior realm? The road to becoming a starry sky expert was still very long. It was as if he had just started learning. Learning more knowledge and building a solid foundation would save him a lot of time in the future and avoid many detours. With the guidance of a master, it was naturally different, even if it was just a master in name. In the Douling world, undercurrents were surging. The southern region, which had unified the entire human territory, had become calm. There were no changes at all. In fact, Shun and Lin Xiaotian didn't make any drastic changes to the 9 regions of the human territory. They did what they should do and orderly integrated the human territory. However, the factions that belonged to Zhou Bufan and Elder Lu had all been cut off. After all, these are the root of the disaster, so they naturally wouldn't be left alive. Lin Feng, your reputation is extremely great. It has spread throughout the entire Douling world. The warriors of the 8 regions of the human territory have long been convinced by you. Qian Lianhuang smiled. Indeed, Feng your reputation has made the integration particularly easy. Lin Xiaotian nodded. Perhaps you don't feel it, but in fact, more than 90% of the people have long admired you. Those warriors even treat you as an idol and worship you. With a faint smile, Lin Xiaotian's eyes flickered. Now, in the human territory, the number of warriors who use spears as weapons has increased by several times. Now, it's only inferior to swords and sabers. It's ranked as the 3rd most popular weapon because of you. Lin Feng was slightly stunned and was extremely surprised. After all, they were enemies with the 8 regions of the human territory. He didn't expect it to have such an effect. There's no need to be surprised. Shun explained with a smile. Although the 8 regions of the Human Territory Alliance belonged to the Sorcerer tribe at that time, it was only because they were forced to do so. Do you think those warriors are really stupid? How many of them are sincerely working for the Sorcerer tribe? After all, they have human blood flowing in their veins. How can they not feel excited and proud when they see their compatriots killing the Sorcerer Emperor Jiang with their own hands? Therefore, this time, unifying the human territory is only troublesome at the beginning. It'll be easy later. Shun said, soon, we'll do what needs to be done. After stabilizing the situation, we can start to select elites on a small scale and carry out the God-making plan. I believe that this time, Shun's eyes flickered with a strong light of hope. The strength of the southern region will have another peak like a leap. A leap like a leap. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he nodded in agreement. It was the case for the southern region and the other 8 regions of the Human Territory Alliance. The young warriors who had been accumulating for countless years only needed a little promotion, and they would quickly surge out like a surging tide. Back then, the southern region was only one region. Now, there were 8 regions in total. It was completely conceivable that the strength of the human race would have a leap by then. However, the prerequisite was that they had to have enough time. Lin Feng pursed his lips slightly, and a hint of worry flashed across his eyes. At this moment, the compass in his left hand suddenly made a crisp sound. Lin Feng looked over and instantly brightened. Grandfather was back. Chapter 1603. Lotus Garden. Grandfather. Lin Feng stepped in with a smile. His gaze landed on the slightly tired figure, and he felt a little guilty. Just from his grandfather's slightly dim eyes and tired face, he knew that the past 1.5 months had not been easy. Given his grandfather's personality, since he had agreed, he would definitely do his best and use all his strength. Feng Chao saw Lin Feng's dim eyes light up slightly. He stood up and smiled bitterly. Lin Feng saw the instant change in his expression, and a ripple appeared in his heart. Needless to say, this smile was a very clear answer. In the end, he still failed. It's okay, grandfather. Lin Feng nodded and smiled apologetically. It's been hard on you. Feng Chao shook his head and furrowed his eyebrows slightly. He let out a long sigh and said, I spent nearly a month lobbying, and there is an effect. Many of the ancient clan leaders actually hate the sorcerer tribe, but the real decision-making power is still in the hands of the ancient gods and the temple master. Lin Feng nodded. He understood. The ancient clan had 7 ancient regions, and each ancient region had an ancient god. They were all at the peak of the Sage King realm, and their strength was unfathomable. They were the leaders of the ancient clan. The temple master was the person with the highest authority in the ancient clan. In fact, he had many conflicts with the temple, and the deep hatred had been accumulated for a long time. Now that ancient god Wu Feng of the southern ancient region had died, there were only 6 ancient gods left. Including the temple master, there were 7 people at the top of the pyramid. His grandfather had already told him this information, and it was not a big secret. It failed. In other words, at least 4 out of the 7 leaders of the ancient clan did not agree to the alliance, Lin Feng thought. The 6 ancient gods did not know, but the temple master was sure that he would not agree to the alliance with the southern region. The temple master was a transcendent existence that maintained the order of the ancient clan. He had hunted down his parents and himself for the sake of the ancient clan's reputation. Why would he ally with a criminal like him? That would be equivalent to slapping his own face. However, since his grandfather's lobbying had lasted for 1.5 months, it was obvious that he had only reached a conclusion in the end. In other words, a portion of the ancient gods supported the alliance. Thinking of this, Lin Feng's eyes couldn't help but light up. If the first step didn't work, perhaps he could try the second step. Grandfather, what are the attitudes of the 6 ancient gods towards our proposal? Lin Feng asked. Feng Chao pondered for a moment before saying, the 6 ancient gods are divided into 3 factions with different opinions. Only ancient god Golden Slaughter and goddess Mother Earth, who are on good terms with our southern region, support the alliance. 2 ancient gods are firmly against it, while the other 2 are wavering. Only 2. Lin Feng frowned. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Previously, he had thought that the 3 ancient gods were on his side and were in favor of the alliance. After all, there were still 2 ancient gods who had yet to make a decision. Even if the Master of Divine Hall rejected the alliance, the ratio would only be 2-3. The key was still between the 2 ancient gods who were still wavering. As for the Temple Master, he disdains to talk to me at all. Feng Chao sighed softly. Because of his daughter, Elegant Bamboo, he had already fallen out with Divine Hall. At that time, he had ancient god Wu Feng's support, so he naturally wasn't afraid. I'll have to trouble you, grandfather. Lin Feng looked at Feng Chao's expression. He could imagine how tired his grandfather had been over the past 1.5 months, especially when it came to the Master of Divine Hall. His grandfather must have given him the cold shoulder and disdained to talk to him. Clearly, his grandfather had put down his pride to help him, but the result was not what he wanted. Waving his hand, Feng Chao sighed helplessly and looked at Lin Feng. Feng, what do you plan to do next? Yes, Lin Feng said resolutely, a sharp glint in his eyes. I wonder if grandfather can help me pull some strings. I want to talk to ancient god Golden Slaughter and goddess Mother Earth face to face. Lin Feng's calm voice carried a hint of stubbornness. He had long since made plans. Oh, Feng Chao was startled, but he soon understood. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. After all, he had been the chief for countless years. Feng Chao immediately understood Lin Feng's thoughts, but he shook his head. Feng, you absolutely cannot. Why? Lin Feng was stunned. Feng Chao said seriously, although the ancient races are divided into 7 ancient regions, they are relatively united, far more so than the sorcerer race and the monster race. Because there are very few of them, they have always been united against a common enemy. I know what you're thinking, but if you instigate ancient god Golden Slaughter and goddess Mother Earth to betray the ancient races, the chances are close to 0. Not only will you offend the 2 ancient gods, you will also infuriate the entire ancient race. With their pride and dignity, they abhor such instigation and betrayal. Ha! Lin Feng clenched his fists so hard that his veins popped out. His grandfather knew what he was thinking. Originally, he had planned to use reason and emotion. Even if he couldn't ally with the entire ancient race, he could at least ally with the 2 ancient regions and take them as the left and right arms of the human race. But he had overlooked a fundamental problem. The ancient races were very different from the sorcerer race, the monster race, and the human race. They were too united. Grandfather is right. Feng was too reckless. A few drops of cold sweat appeared on Lin Feng's forehead. Luckily, he had asked his grandfather about this. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire if he were to act rashly. He might even infuriate the ancient race. If that were to happen, there wouldn't even be a sliver of hope for an alliance. Although they couldn't ally for the time being, it was only temporary. Once the sorcerer race started to lose, once the human race became stronger, and once the situation changed unexpectedly, the ancient race might change their minds. Many things weren't settled yet. Nothing. Feng Chao's eyes were a little lonely. It was rare for his nephew to ask him for a favor, but the result was like this. He felt very guilty. Although he tried his best, the final result was still 2 votes against 5. Most of the ancient gods were in favor of forming an alliance with the sorcerer race. The human race rose too quickly, and their foundation isn't stable yet. Feng Chao sighed. Although the sorcerer race lost Sorcerer King Jiang and their vitality was greatly damaged, they still have their strength. In addition, many of the ancient gods have experienced the second war of the sorcerer race, so they still have some blind trust in the sorcerer race. Right now, the sorcerer race and the sorcerer race are still in a stalemate. The sorcerer race hasn't shown any signs of collapse, so to change their mind, difficult, very difficult. After letting out 2 long sighs, Feng Chao looked at Lin Feng. Seeing that he was deep in thought, he said softly, "I'm sorry, Feng." After saying that, he shook his head helplessly and walked back. His face looked old and powerless, but it was difficult for him to shake the entire situation with his meager strength. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, Feng Chao stopped and turned around. "All right, Feng, there's something I forgot to say." Lin Feng's eyes flashed. "It's not a big deal." Feng Chao laughed self-deprecatingly. Because of the destruction of the southern ancient region and the death of ancient god Wu Feng, the ancient race lost an ancient god position. I heard that it was taken over by the son of the master of the divine palace, but unfortunately, he is in seclusion. However, even if he participates in the voting, it's useless. The difference between 2 votes and 5 votes is too big. Lin Feng nodded lightly. It was indeed not a big deal. Even if he added that vote, it was only 3 votes, so he was still 2 votes short. Moreover, the one who took over the position of ancient god was the son of the master of the divine palace, so he would definitely be of the same lineage as the master of the divine palace. Naturally, he would not support the alliance. Perhaps if he participated in the voting, the 2 ancient gods who had been wavering all this time would already side with the master of the divine palace. However, the son of the master of the divine palace is also a true genius. At such a young age, he cultivated to the peak of the Saint King realm and was hailed by the ancient gods as the number one person in the ancient race in 10 million years. He is comparable to you, Feng Er. Feng Chao smiled indifferently. That day I also heard a little about him in the southern ancient region. Although elegant bamboo is overflowing with talent, compared to him, the difference is like a firefly and the bright moon. Feng Er, if you meet him in the future, you must not be careless. He was given the surname Gu and the name Sheng. After saying that, he shook his head and left. Lin Feng was left alone. His eyes flashed, and he could not help but widen. Gu Sheng? It's him. In his mind, the memories of the past instantly surged out like a tide. That day, when he first met Gu Sheng in the oasis, he fought with Gu Sheng using the heavenly treasure. His strength was indeed amazing. At such a young age, he was already able to compete with Bull Demon as an equal. How powerful was he? A rare genius of the ancient race in 10 million years? Lin Feng smiled and nodded. It was fitting. It was not unexpected that Gu Sheng could succeed as an ancient god. He had this ability. What was unexpected was that he was actually the son of the master of the divine palace. It was impossible to tell from his appearance at all. Obviously, he was completely different from his father. He knew that Gu Sheng was of his bloodline, but did not care. He was a person who did not care about trifles. Although they were enemies, Gu Sheng's impression of him was not bad. Bright moon sees heart. To a certain extent, he and Gu Sheng were the same kind of people. For the sake of his goal, he could move forward firmly. Secluded cultivation? Lin Feng smiled. I wonder how strong he is now. Gu Sheng thought to himself. To be honest, he wanted to compete with him. But now it was not the time to think about this. It's going to be troublesome. Lin Feng touched his head. His heart was in chaos. Without the ancient race alliance, the 9 great regions of the human race seemed to have lost a layer of protection. They were like grass standing in the wind, in danger. He had to rely on himself. Since he could not think of any other way, he could only take one step at a time. At least for now, the sorcerer race did not dare to attack the humans. The demon race had been gathering their forces and had not started to attack the sorcerer race. The 9 great regions of the human race naturally had a lot of buffer time. Every minute and every second was so precious. Maybe in 1 or 2 more days, the human race could have a few more saint-level experts and 1 more saint-level existence. Lin Feng was also anxious. His main body was at a critical moment in the Stepping Star Mansion, but there were too many things waiting for his main body to do. The Astral treasure puppet needed to be made in a hurry. The Shield of Truth also needed to be sped up. To create an undead spirit expert, he could not rely on external forces. He could only keep digging from himself. This was not bad. After all, his own strength was the most crucial and important thing. However, he needed enough time. Every second counted. However, at this moment, an unexpected person suddenly paid a visit to the southern region. Lin Feng nodded and looked straight at Gu Sheng. Brother Gu seems to be interested in forming an alliance. Actually, it wasn't hard to guess. If Gu Sheng was against the alliance, he wouldn't have come here. It was obvious that Gu Sheng was quite interested in the alliance, which surprised him a little. After all, his identity was so special. The son of the temple master of the ancient race. Logically speaking, he should be on the same side as his father. Gu Sheng shook his head, his gaze deep as he said, with which Emperor Zhong's death, the sorcerer race fell into a state of disunity. Even though the Witch Emperor had planned everything and appointed Shi Jiuyin as a successor, Shi Jiuyin's strength wasn't the strongest among the Witch Kings, not to mention he was talented and virtuous. He only had a few tricks up his sleeve, which made him unpopular. From which Emperor Zhong's death until now, Shi Jiuyin still hasn't managed to unify the sorcerer race. This shows his ability. I'm afraid he doesn't even have half of which Emperor Zhong's power. With him leading the sorcerer race, Gu Sheng frowned slightly and said solemnly, the sorcerer race's defeat is certain. Gu Sheng's analysis was very thorough. Judging from his appearance, Gu Sheng was obviously a person with both brains and courage. He was hailed as a rare genius of the ancient race and was not inferior to Thousand Love Emperor. Brother Gu is knowledgeable, Lin Feng praised. Gu Sheng chuckled and looked at Lin Feng, but I have my reservations about forming an alliance with you humans. After all, the sorcerer race has a huge foundation. Even though which Emperor Jiang is dead, with our ancient race's strength, if we can truly form an alliance, we might be able to fight against the demonic beast race. As Gu Sheng spoke, a sharp battle intent flickered in his eyes. Truly, how heavy were these two words? Looking at Gu Sheng's battle intent, how could Lin Feng not know what he was thinking? Gu Sheng's ambition and confidence were no less than his. Gu Sheng's words were spoken clearly. In the past, when the sorcerer race and ancient race had formed an alliance, the sorcerer race was the one in charge. After all, the sorcerer race's strength far surpassed the ancient races, and they had which Emperor Zhang's support. But now, with Shi Jiuyin as the commander, Gu Sheng refused to accept it. He was far more outstanding than Shi Jiuyin in terms of strength, ability, and leadership. What a pity! Lin Feng shook his head and said softly, the sorcerer race would never allow the ancient race to be the leader and the sorcerer race's subordinate. Gu Sheng's so-called true alliance would never happen. With the sorcerer race's strength, how could they submit to the ancient race? It's a pity. Gu Sheng pursed his lips and shook his head. If the sorcerer race wholeheartedly cooperates with the ancient race, I have a 30 to 40% chance of defeating the demonic beast race in the war between the sorcerer race and the demon tribe. Gu Sheng's words were filled with confidence. There was a trace of regret in his voice as he raised his head to look at Lin Feng. That's why I came here. Lin Feng frowned slightly when he heard the sound. Gu Sheng's meaning was clear. Since the sorcerer race couldn't form an alliance with the ancient race as the leader, then he would take a step back and borrow the strength of the human race. Brother Lin, you can rest assured. Gu Sheng exuded a heroic aura, and his momentum surged. The ancient race is not the sorcerer race. We will definitely treat the human race as our true ally, and we will live and die together. We can also swear to the heavens that we will never betray each other and fight against the demonic beast race together. The only condition is that I, Gu Sheng, will be the leader of the ancient race and the human race's army. Gu Sheng's gaze was firm as he looked at Lin Feng. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lin Feng was speechless. Those who came did not come with good intentions, and those who were kind would not come. He didn't expect Gu Sheng to be the one to beat him. After all, he was the son of the temple master. He had strength, power, and ability. He naturally had the confidence to say such words. However, did he want the human race to be subservient again? In the past, they had to be subservient to the sorcerer race. Now, they had to be subservient to the ancient race? He wasn't willing. It was indeed his wish to form an alliance with the ancient race, but the prerequisite was that the human race would be the leader and the ancient race would be the second. I'm sorry. Lin Feng shook his head and rejected without hesitation. Gu Sheng's bright eyes looked at Lin Feng, and a hint of disappointment flashed across them. In his opinion, this was the only opportunity for the ancient race and even the entire human race. If the sorcerer race, the ancient race, and the human race fought on their own, they would definitely lose this war. However, he also knew that unlike the ancient race, the human race was the same as the sorcerer race. They had the final say, and the human race's leader was the ordinary-looking young man in front of him, Lin Feng. His rejection was the rejection of the entire human race. Most importantly, the human race had become so powerful because of Lin Feng's existence. Sigh. Gu Sheng let out a long sigh, and the disappointment on his face instantly turned into a bitter smile. Actually, I expected this answer, but I still wanted to give it a try and see if there was a chance. Looking at Lin Feng, Gu Sheng's eyes suddenly shot out a sharp battle intent. Brother Lin, I wonder if you dare to make a bet with me? A bet on the world. A bet on the world? Lin Feng asked. Yes. Gu Sheng nodded. 1-on-1, you and I will fight. If I win, We will form an alliance with the ancient race. I will be the leader, and you will be the second. One-on-one battle? A light flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. Gu Sheng knew that he had killed the sorcerer King Jiang, but he still dared to make such a request. It was obvious that he had something to rely on. However, the stakes were a little high. What if I win? Lin Feng muttered to himself. If you can win, Gu Sheng smiled. I will stand on your side, and your opinion will be the leader. I will raise both my hands in support of the alliance you mentioned. Lin Feng smiled. This doesn't seem very fair. If he lost, the human race would have to listen to the ancient race. If he won, only Gu Sheng would listen to him? Brother Lin, there is something you don't know. Gu Sheng shook his head. Although my position in the ancient race is special, all the important matters of the ancient race are decided by the 7 great ancient gods and the Hall Master. This rule has been set for a long time, and I cannot change it. However, this bet is indeed a little unfair. Gu Sheng smiled. How about this if you can win against me? Why don't I speak for you? Although I don't dare to give a 100% guarantee, I don't dare to say that I can make all the teachers change their stance and agree to form an alliance. 30%, at least 30%, and at most 50%. With a sonorous voice, Gu Sheng stretched out 5 fingers, his eyes burning. Obviously, this was the biggest concession he could make. All the teachers? Lin Feng was moved. He could guess who Gu Sheng's teachers were. His grandfather, Feng Chao, did not have much interaction with the 6 great ancient gods. However, Gu Sheng was different. He could help him wholeheartedly, and the alliance might not be impossible. With his position, the 30 to 50% chance, he said, would not be false. After all, including his vote, Ancient God Golden Slaughter, and Divine Mother Earth, there would be 3 votes. Among them, there were 2 great ancient gods who were neutral. It was entirely possible that they would side with the alliance. There might not be no hope. How is it, Brother Lin? Gu Sheng smiled faintly as he spoke. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. Thousands of thoughts flashed in his mind. What he had to consider was not only whether he could win, but also the possibility of losing. However, if Gu Sheng's strength could surpass his, why not let him lead the alliance? After all, it was difficult for the ancient race to reproduce. If they could defeat the demon race, the humans would have enough time to continue developing. In time, they would also have the hope of reaching the peak of the Douling world. Most importantly, he was confident in his doppelganger's strength. In the past 1.5 months, his comprehension of the Space Tao had increased by another level, and his strength had increased slightly. Would he lose to Gu Sheng? Even if he is a rare genius of the ancient race, I will definitely win. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. He already had a conclusion in his heart. A bet on the world? Very well, let's take a gamble then. It's decided then. Looking at Gu Sheng, Lin Feng's eyes were filled with battle intent. Their eyes met, and it was like 2 bright shooting stars colliding intensely. Chapter 1605. In the Starry Sky. The fall of the wizard race's giant star and the flickering of the demon race's dark star could not compare to the brilliance of the 2 bright stars of the human race and the ancient race. One was a rare genius of the human race. The other was a rare genius of the ancient race that was hard to come by in a million years. The other was someone who had overcome obstacles step by step and reached the peak after going through countless difficulties. The other was someone who the ancient race had placed high hopes on. He was given the best cultivation environment since young and was carefully nurtured. His potential was even stimulated by the combined efforts of the 7 ancient gods. Lin Feng, Gu Sheng. After the fall of the wizard Emperor Jiang, the 2 undisputed strongest experts of the human race in the Douling world. However, compared to Lin Feng's current fame, Gu Sheng's strength was still a mystery. The only thing that was known was that, since he dared to fight, he naturally had a certain level of confidence. The reason why geniuses were geniuses was because they were different from others. They could not be judged by ordinary people's abilities. The bottleneck for ordinary ancient martial art practitioners was just a step for geniuses. Ordinary ancient martial art practitioners would need to spend hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years to comprehend the Tao. However, geniuses might only need a moment of inspiration. Regardless of whether it was Lin Feng or Gu Sheng, their current strength could not be used as a basis to judge their strength tomorrow. Perhaps after breaking through one level, their strength would be incomparable to before. This was because they were super geniuses in the endless wilderness. This place was a wasteland. The traces of war were still deeply left on this piece of land. The faint smell of blood could be smelled. There were no strange beasts around, not even flowers or trees. There was only the endless wasteland. No one knew that there were two great experts facing each other on this piece of land. You are stronger than before. Lin Feng floated in midair and looked straight at Gu Sheng. I can't compare to your improvement speed. Gu Sheng smiled faintly. Although his expression was calm, his battle intent was surging in his heart. He had always been carrying a heavy responsibility and the reputation of being a genius. Not to mention people of the same age. Even in the entire history of the Douling world, there was rarely anyone who could surpass his cultivation speed. However, there was such a person before his eyes. The human expert that he did not care about in the past had not only caught up to his cultivation speed, but also, he was even stronger than him. Being defeated by the bull demon made him realize that there was always someone better out there. Being defeated in the fight for the heavenly treasure made him realize that heaven's luck would not always be with him. Opportunities were not only dependent on heaven's will, but they also had to rely on their own strength to fight for them. Gu Sheng was originally an extremely intelligent person. It was just that he had cultivated too much in seclusion and lacked tempering. Setbacks and failures are indispensable on the road to success. Reading 10,000 books is not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. The continuous setbacks made Gu Sheng understand. After returning to the Gu clan, Gu Sheng no longer cared about worldly affairs. After obtaining the permission of the ancient gods, he cultivated in seclusion in the Gu clan's forbidden grounds for a few hundred years until he reached the true peak of the Saint King realm. Only after reaching the true bottleneck did he come out of seclusion. As soon as he came out of seclusion, he fought side by side with the witch Emperor Jiang. Even if he did not use his full strength, he still suppressed the bull demon. His strength was unfathomable, comparable to the witch Emperor Jiang's strength. Lin Feng said softly. They were evenly matched. Just the aura emitted by Gu Sheng, which faintly seeped out of the origin source of water, made his heart palpitate. That handsome figure completely blended into the water, drifting unpredictably. That extremely strong defensive ability, just by sensing it, was already quite impressive. Compared to the witch Emperor Jiang, Gu Sheng only lacked a heavenly treasure. However, a heavenly treasure was not invincible. No matter how good a treasure was, it could only increase the strength of an ancient martial art practitioner and not completely change them. Just like the battle between him and the witch Emperor Di Jiang, he also did not have a heavenly treasure, but the one who died in the end was the witch Emperor Di Jiang. Gu Sheng could not be underestimated. Lin Feng sized up Gu Sheng, and Gu Sheng sized up Lin Feng as well. His heart trembled. Only when they truly faced each other could he feel the strength of his opponent. Even if Lin Feng's starting point was much lower than his, Gu Sheng could completely feel a kind of threat, a threat to his life. This human was like a peerless, ferocious beast. That mere human body gave off an incomparably perfect feeling, filled with extreme explosive power, abnormally terrifying. What a strong body. Gu Sheng's eyes were so sharp that he could completely see it. The reason why the witch Emperor Jiang was the strongest in the Douling world was because of his speed, because of his spatial control, and because of his ability to advance and retreat freely. For Lin Feng to be able to kill him, he either has strength that far surpasses him, or he has spatial and temporal control that far surpasses him. However, both of these possibilities are not big. Now, understand. Gu Sheng finally understood. Seeing Lin Feng's terrifying body, he vaguely knew the method he used to kill the witch Emperor Jiang. using the other party's method, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Since the witch Emperor Jiang could reach his extreme speed, Lin Feng could probably do it too. No, he definitely could. I cannot let him get close. Gu Sheng's eyes flickered, and he already had a plan in his heart. Since he cultivated the heavenly god's bloodline, he naturally specialized in long-range attacks. The reason why he had been in seclusion for so long was to deal with his greatest opponent, the witch Emperor Jiang. As long as he could limit the witch Emperor Jiang's extreme speed, limit his sky arc, limit his spatial control, then he would have the ability to defeat the witch Emperor Jiang. And now, this opponent had become Lin Feng. He had the same confidence. Pong, pong. The power of heaven and earth, the power of the stars, almost released a bright light at the same time. The terrifying aura and pressure were enough to make warriors below the saint level unable to resist. Lin Feng and Gu Sheng started the battle at the same time. There was no need to say anything. Both of them already knew this battle. They were evenly matched. Come. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with battle intent. The World Annihilation Spear suddenly appeared in his hand, and its power was overwhelming. He suddenly took a step forward, and his body instantly moved forward. Since he had started the battle, he would naturally go all out and attack the opponent's weakness. It wasn't a trick, nor was it fear. It was respect for a true opponent, and he would use all his strength. Gu Sheng was worth fighting. Come at me. Gu Sheng's eyes completely lit up. The Aquarius constellation star seal on his forehead was extremely bright, and the energy it emitted far surpassed Jinji, Shiji Xian, and even Qian Lianhuang. Behind him, a ray of clear light suddenly appeared. The Aquarius constellation's star map flashed, as though it had merged with Gu Sheng. Aquarius constellation's 8th grade mystery, water mirror world. Gu Sheng's hands formed a star seal, and his expression was holy. Rich water origin energy surged out. In an instant, the color of the heavens and earth changed, completely enveloping the entire region. The pale water light was as beautiful as the color of a lake. It was so beautiful that one could even see the figure of a person in the water. It was a mysterious display of extreme beauty. However, the power was rather terrifying. Domain-type mystery? 8th grade mystery. Lin Feng's eyes completely lit up. Feeling the change in space, feeling the tyrannical power of the water origin, his heart was shocked. Gu Sheng was indeed very strong. Chapter 1606. There are many types of mysteries. Offensive-type profound mysteries, defensive-type profound mysteries, control-type profound mysteries, and so on. The difficulty of cultivating profound mysteries was different. Although the difficulty of cultivating profound mysteries was related to one's comprehension ability, and there were also other factors, such as how proficient a martial artist was at comprehending profound mysteries, there were still differences in the difficulty of comprehending profound mysteries. Among them, offensive and defensive mysteries were easier to comprehend and belonged to the beginner level of difficulty. On the other hand, domain mysteries were of an advanced level of difficulty. Although they weren't the most difficult mysteries to comprehend, the difficulty was already rather high. Ever since he awakened Toto, Lin Feng's horizons and knowledge had gradually broadened, and his understanding of mysteries had become much clearer. Like star techniques, mysteries were also different in strength and had a complete trapezoidal gradient. There were strong and weak mysteries, and the difficulty of comprehending them was different. The weakest mysteries were the 10th grade mysteries, and there were countless of them. They were considered unorthodox mysteries, and their power was needless to say. For example, Lin Feng comprehended the sky vision mystery from Qian Lianhuang, which was extremely easy to comprehend. Another example was the gallows real body, which belonged to the same category. According to Toto, there were the lower 3, 7th, 8th, and 9th mysteries. Of course, this was for starry sky powerhouses. In the Douling world, the so-called lower 3 mysteries were already rather impressive. The mystery sparrow kill, starfold dance, blood phoenix, golden scale mountain, and so on belong to the 9th level. In the Doling world, one of the conditions to become a Sage King powerhouse was to comprehend the mysterious power, and this mysterious power was the 9th level. Above that was the 8th level, which was extremely difficult to comprehend. The 100 Phoenix of the Phoenix constellation belonged to this category. The most powerful mystery that Mage Emperor Jiang had comprehended was only the 8th level. In the Doling world, there were only a handful of people who could comprehend the 8th level of mysteries and perform it, which meant that they had reached the beginner level. And there was one right in front of him. Moreover, being able to perform it successfully meant that he had reached the beginner level of the 8th level of domain. The ancient race's super genius, Gusheng. Pa! Pa! An astonishing suction force surged from the calm lake as though a giant whale was sucking with its mouth wide open. Just by looking at it, one would not be able to see anything special about this picturesque lake. However, Lin Feng, who was trapped in the territory, could clearly feel it. Gusheng's domain had already displayed an astonishing effect. Resistance and speed. I see. Lin Feng pondered in his heart. He instantly understood the reason why Gusheng used this water mystery domain. Relying on the suction force of the lake, his speed would probably be reduced to 1/10 of his speed in the outside world. If he fought against an Empyrean god like this, he would be a sitting duck. 1/10 of his speed was reduced by 90%. Ordinary warriors had no way of getting close to an Empyrean god of the same level. Gusheng was clearly aware of the difference in speed between the two of them. If Emperor Jiang was trapped in this profound domain, it would be hard for him to catch up to Gusheng with just his speed. However, this was only one aspect of the battle. After all, Sorcerer Emperor Jiang also controlled the mysteries of space, and he also had the heavenly arc accompanying him. It was still too early to say who would win. Aquarius constellation's 8th grade mystery, Water Dragon's Roar. Gusheng's face congealed, his eyebrows flashing. Roar! In an instant, a huge transparent water dragon condensed with water origin energy gushed out from the waves far away. Controlled by his rich life energy, Gusheng used all his strength, unleashing killing moves one after another without stopping. His strength exploded. Yet another 8th grade mystery. However, to Lin Feng, it was not surprising. The 8th grade domain was much harder to comprehend than the attack type. Since Gusheng could comprehend the domain type, the attack type should not be a problem. Domain plus attack. Gusheng was obviously using the battle style of an Empyrean god to the extreme. At this moment, even Sorcerer Emperor Jiang would be in a tough battle, but Gusheng had miscalculated. Lin Feng was indeed fighting with Sorcerer Emperor Jiang at the extreme speed, and indeed had an extremely powerful physique. However, this so-called powerful was different from what he had imagined. Lin Feng had indeed reached the extreme speed, and so had Sorcerer Emperor Jiang. However, was it the same? It was completely different. The so-called extreme speed was merely the extreme speed of the Doling world. If one exceeded the extreme speed, they would be suppressed by the Doling world, even tearing the space apart and falling into the spatial turbulence. However, in the boundless starry sky, this so-called extreme speed was simply unreachable. Lin Feng's true speed was 20 times faster than the extreme speed. Sorcerer Emperor Jiang's true speed was only 2 to 3 times faster than the extreme speed. It was a difference of almost 10 times. So, Lin Feng moved, and his lips curled into a faint smile. It had been a long time. It had been a long time since he was able to unleash his full speed. Even if his speed was restricted to 90%, the feeling of going all out was really great. Every time he fought, his speed would be restricted to that meager point, unable to unleash his full potential. However, at this moment, it was as though all the energy in his body had been unleashed at once. Pump! The terrifying speed even caused the space to tremble. Even if his speed was restricted to 90%, Lin Feng's burst of speed exceeded the extreme speed in the blink of an eye. 2 times the extreme speed. Like an afterimage, he brushed past the powerful water dragon in an instant. His speed had completely exceeded Gu Sheng's expectations. He couldn't control the water dragon's attack in time at all. His eyes widened in shock at Lin Feng's terrifying speed. Impossible. Gu Sheng was incomparably shocked. He was very clear about the power of the 8th grade domain mystery, Water Mirror World. This was originally his killing move to deal with Sorcerer Emperor Jiang. After Sorcerer Emperor Jiang's true speed was weakened by the domain, it was equal to his own speed. However, this Lin Feng, it was as though he didn't care about the domain at all and unleashed his true speed. What exactly was going on? He also used the domain? No, there's no reaction from the domain power. Could it be that he has some special innate treasure that can ignore the domain? Yes, it must be so. Gu Sheng pursed his lips tightly as this thought flashed through his mind. Although this type of innate treasure was rare, especially one that could resist an 8th grade mystery, he had never heard of it before. However, it didn't mean that it didn't exist. At the very least, everything he saw was real. Gu Sheng couldn't imagine that Lin Feng's true speed could reach 20 times the extreme speed. After all, this was too unimaginable. Normally, one wouldn't even think about it. To be able to defeat Sorcerer Emperor Jiang, Lin Feng is indeed powerful. He has hidden his strength well. Gu Sheng's eyes flashed with intense light as he clenched his fists tightly. Dense water, origin energy rapidly condensed, squeezing out every bit of energy in his body. He would never admit defeat like this. He still had a trump card. Chapter 1607. Water Mirror World Attack. Gu Sheng's face was slightly pale, but his power was completely unleashed. The Aquarius constellation's star chart behind him shone brightly. In an instant, the originally calm lake's surface was filled with whirlpools. The water origin energy quickly gathered and formed many water tornadoes. They spun continuously from the whirlpools and expanded rapidly, covering the entire domain. What was a domain? The so-called domain meant to control everything. Naturally, it wouldn't only have the effect of control. When a domain reached entry level, one would be able to unleash the most basic control effect of the domain. When one reached small success, one would be able to unleash the domain's attack ability. Even though the power of the domain's attack wasn't as strong as a small success level attack, it was much stronger than an entry-level attack. Not only could one use the domain's power, it could also attack in a wide range. Once it reached the large success level, the domain could not only suppress the enemy, it could also strengthen oneself and increase one's battle power. Once it reached the perfect level, the domain could then be called perfect. It was a true domain. Of course, it was impossible for a perfect domain to exist in the Doling world. Even a large success-level domain had never appeared before, because as long as a martial artist could cultivate any 8th-level mystery to the large success level, he would already be a strong martial artist in the universe. Boom, boom, boom. In all directions, the water tornadoes were terrifyingly powerful. With the help of the domain's power, the entire space was only left with those boundless water tornadoes. There were at least a dozen of them. As they spun continuously, they expanded, spun, and expanded again, as though they were limitless. So, Lin Feng's body was like a phantom as he dodged rapidly. Even though the water tornadoes covered a huge area, there were still gaps. Relying on his nimble speed, Lin Feng moved freely and didn't even collide with the huge water tornadoes. His speed was so fast that the water tornadoes couldn't catch up. However, Gu Sheng didn't panic at all. He already knew that Lin Feng could dodge, but so what? Water Dragon Roar. Gu Sheng's eyes shone brightly as he waved both of his hands. The water origin energy gathered and formed 2 huge water dragons. Controlling them was several times more difficult than controlling one dragon. For a moment, beads of sweat appeared on Gu Sheng's forehead. However, the fighting spirit in his eyes was endless. Rumble. The huge water dragons came and went freely in this water mirror world. as if they were in their own courtyard. Lin Feng still had to avoid the waterspouts, but the two water dragons were different. Although they were in different forms, they had the same energy, especially when they were cast by the same expert. Chi. Lin Feng had just dodged a waterspout when suddenly, a waterspout shot out without any warning. A huge amount of water origin energy rolled over, making it impossible for him to dodge. It was extremely ingenious. Mountain of golden scales, rhenium golden shield. Lin Feng's reaction was extremely quick as well. Not only did a layer of armor form around his body, a golden shield that was shaped like a sharp spike even appeared in his hand. Although it was a grade 9 profundity, he had already comprehended it to the initial stage. Not only did it form 2 layers of defense, it even formed a single point of defense. 1 gold and 1 water instantly collided. Boom! Lin Feng frowned slightly. The water dragon, which was only at the entry stage, crushed the rhenium golden shield, and the remaining energy landed on the golden scales armor, shattering it as well. However, after 2 consecutive layers of weakening, the water dragon's energy had already been depleted by 99%. The remaining bit of energy that landed on his body was not enough to cause him any trouble. However, the powerful impact stopped him from moving forward. Grade 8 profundity is indeed powerful, Lin Feng thought to himself. Just at the entry stage, it was already able to crush the rhenium golden shield that was at the initial stage. Previously, he had also considered comprehending a grade 8 defensive profundity. However, his doppelganger's body was extremely strong, and his fighting style was not focused on defense. Therefore, he chose to cultivate 2 grade 9 profundities. Reaching the initial stage with the help of Lei Zhang's real body was already enough. In fact, it was indeed so. Even if it was which Emperor Zhang's attack, he could still block it. Right now, he was only pushed back by the impact. Even if Gu Shang's grade 8 profundity was at the initial stage, he was still confident that he could block it. However, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The spread of the power of heaven and earth was extremely sensitive. The powerful impact not only stopped him from moving forward, it also trapped him in the encirclement of the 3 water dragons. Gu Shang's moves came one after another, and they were very ingenious. Both of them were celestial spirit masters, but compared to Gu Shang, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. Interesting. Lin Feng smiled. Although he felt that Gu Shang's moves were ingenious, this encirclement was not very useful against him. Breaking the Tao with strength. 5th layer, spatial disorder. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he displayed his strength. The space in front of him was filled with layers of mist, as if the space was intersecting and becoming extremely blurry. Lin Feng's figure was also extremely mysterious. Another water dragon roared as it pounced towards Lin Feng, directly tearing Lin Feng into pieces. However, it was only an afterimage. Including the pincer attack of the 3 powerful water dragons, there was not even the slightest gap. However, Lin Feng easily escaped. No, it should be moving forward. Lin Feng's eyes were sharp, and his aura was imposing. The power of the heavens and earth surged out, and the apocalypse spear in his hand was already roaring ferociously. He had already seen Gu Shang's strength clearly, and there was no need to waste any more time. Facing such an opponent, if he held back, it was very likely that he would be in danger. Although he could use the power of the heavens and earth to exhaust his opponent, this way of winning, he was not willing to do it. If he wanted to win, he had to win decisively. "I'm coming, Brother Gu." Lin Feng's voice was not loud, but it was like thunder piercing the ear. In this domain of wind and rain, he was like a warrior charging through the checkpoint, sweeping everything in his path. Apocalypse Darkness. Lin Feng directly activated the Apocalypse Spear's ability, and the Apocalypse Sky Canopy appeared, mixed with the flow of time. It was slow but rapid, and there was a dense black divine light in the indigo color. Driven by the power of the heavens and earth, the Apocalypse Spear became stronger. It was not only a change in color, but also an increase in power. Hua. His control of the surroundings was obviously much weaker. The Apocalypse Darkness was a domain-type ability. Although it was not as good as the Water Mirror world, it could still exert more than 50% of its power in a small area. And this was enough. Break! Lin Feng did not dodge at all. With a black aura, he directly broke through the waterspouts. Facing the unpredictable waterspouts, the waterspouts were getting smaller and smaller in all directions. If he continued to fight, it would only be disadvantageous to him. His intuition told him that the power of the waterspouts was obviously not what he had seen. The longer he dragged on, the more troublesome the situation would become. Rather than that, he might as well consume some of his strength and fight head-on. His strength exploded, and one of the waterspouts was directly penetrated. Lin Feng's gaze was sharp, and he appeared like an invincible god of war. His speed did not decrease at all. In the blink of an eye, like a sharp arrow, he penetrated everything. The waterspouts were like paper, unable to withstand a single blow. Bang! It collided with the water dragon roar again. Gu Sheng's timing was unusually accurate. The moment Lin Feng penetrated the waterspouts, he could not dodge. However, how could Lin Feng, who had suffered once, not be prepared? The water dragon roar's power only made him retreat. After the layers of defense neutralized it, it did not cause any substantial damage. A slight retreat was just a blink of an eye for Lin Feng, who had heaven-defying speed. Fast. It was extremely fast. The distance between Lin Feng and Gu Sheng gradually shortened. Gu Sheng's expression became more and more serious, and also more and more pale. On the other hand, Lin Feng's fighting spirit became stronger and stronger. The difference in strength between them was obvious at this moment. Even if Gu Sheng had a slight advantage in the beginning of the battle, but the result would not change at all. Break for me! Lin Feng shouted and penetrated the last barrier of Gu Sheng. The circular defensive waterspout was endless, but it was far from reaching the attack limit of Lin Feng's spear technique. The waterspout shattered like a mirror. The defense condensed by the origin of water was ultimately in vain. All of the illusions and obstacles disappeared, including the endless suction force from below. The entire space returned to its original calm state. Gu Sheng had lost. Although the battle could still continue, Gu Sheng clearly understood the consequences of letting Lin Feng get close to him. Lin Feng's true strength had been revealed in the previous battle. His strength was indeed higher than his current strength. Both sides were exchanging pointers, not a battle of life and death. Since both sides already had a conclusion, there was no need to continue. It was meaningless to fight to the death now. I lost. Gu Sheng's face was pale, but he forced a smile. This rare genius of the ancient race had his own pride and backbone. He also had a broad mind. Losing was not shameful. On the contrary, it gave him more fighting spirit. He had a goal to fight for and fight for. How could a true martial artist be afraid of failure? It's only temporary. Lin Feng withdrew his aura, and the world-destroying spear disappeared from his hand. He looked at Gu Sheng and smiled. With your understanding of the Tao of Origin, I believe it won't take long for you to step into the Starry Sky realm. You will become a Starry Sky expert earlier than me. Although Gu Sheng had lost this battle, his understanding of the Tao of Origin was far superior to his. The biggest obstacle to breaking through to the Starry Sky realm might be a threshold for ordinary martial artists, but it was not too big of a problem for Gu Sheng. As long as he was willing, he would definitely be able to step into the Starry Sky realm in a year or so. Gu Sheng smiled and looked at Lin Feng with a strange look in his eyes. Next time, I won't lose to you again. Then he closed his eyes as if he was savoring the battle. Gu Sheng took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and said softly, I will do my best to do what I promised you. With you in charge, the current humans may really be able to achieve something. Gu Sheng nodded and his eyes flashed. See you again. As her voice fell, Gu Sheng's figure was like a wispy stream of water that instantly disappeared. I'll wait for your good news. Lin Feng smiled and said softly, but he did not care if Gu Sheng heard him. Looking at the departing figure, there was a glimmer of hope in his heart. because he knew what kind of person Gu Shang was. Since he was willing to help him, he would definitely do his best. Hope, this time, the ancient race could really let go of their prejudices and their pride. Because the humans and the ancient race were indeed, it was a win-win situation. Chapter 1608. The battle with Gu Shang disappeared like the wind. Lin Feng did not mention this battle to anyone, and there was no need to mention it. Today, his reputation was much higher than Gu Shang, the so-called genius of the Gu clan. Killing Sorcerer King Jiang had made him the target of public criticism, and both the Sorcerer and Demon clans were afraid of him. Furthermore, he also respected Gu Shang as an opponent. Still failed. Lin Feng opened his eyes and frowned. He looked into the distance and sighed. It had been more than half a month since the battle ended. If Gu Shang could persuade the ancient gods, he would have received the news by now. Lin Feng did not doubt Gu Shang's credibility, as it was an insult to Gu Shang. It seems that Gu Shang's position is not very useful when it concerns the fate of the clan, Lin Feng said softly. Gu Shang's position in the ancient clan was very high. He was the disciple of the ancient gods and the only descendant of the master of Divine Hall. It could be said that the fate of the ancient clan was on him. However, he was still too young. Like Qianli and Huang, he was seen as the hope of the ancient clan, but he was not the one who held the power. It was the other 6 ancient gods and the master of Divine Hall. Phew! Lin Feng pursed his lips and his eyes were blurred. Although he was slightly disappointed, he was not too touched. After all, his grandfather had failed in his first attempt, and he understood the attitude of the ancient clan. 6 ancient gods, Gu Shang, and the master of Divine Hall. Only ancient God Golden Dew, Mother Earth, and Gu Shang supported the alliance. It was far from enough. Previously, he had hoped that Gu Shang could persuade the other 2 neutral ancient gods, but it seemed that he had failed. Gu Shang's influence on the ancient clan is not as good as his father. Lin Feng nodded. The master of Divine Hall had the strongest reaction to the alliance. He maintained the order, dignity, and pride of the ancient clan. It was not a wrong decision for him to not ally with the humans. He had his own position, and no matter what, Gu Shang could not force him. The only thing he could do was to wait and slowly increase the fighting power of the ancient clan. The shortest is 1.5 years. The longest is 3 to 5 years. Only then will the human race truly enter a stable stage. Even if the magi and demons attack, we will have the ability to resist them, Lin Feng thought. The only thing he was afraid of now was that this 1.5 years would be too difficult to endure. 10 days ago, the demon race began their large-scale attack. The shaman tribe did not resist. Instead, they chose to give up and guard the shaman realm to the death. Lin Feng pondered. The actions of the witch tribe were not beyond his expectations. Just like the southern region, what the shaman clan needed the most right now was time. The death of the shaman Emperor Jiang was too great a blow to the shaman clan, to the point that it was already threatening the foundation of the shaman clan. Although Shi Juin had become the sorcerer sovereign, he was besieged from all sides. The sorcerer tribe was in a state of disunity, and it would be extremely difficult for them to reunite. I wonder what the demons will do next. Should we attack the root of the problem and destroy the magi in one go, or attack them one by one and use the big force to surround the small force? According to the initial plan, we will slowly invade the entire inland area and suppress the magi in all aspects to weaken their strength and strengthen ourselves. Both options have their pros and cons, but no matter what, the shaman tribe is already in a passive position. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Although the southern region was also in danger, it was much better than the shaman tribe's current situation. Most importantly, the demon race did not seem to want to attack the southern region or even the human territory. Instead, they focused on attacking the shaman tribe. With the shaman tribe as bait, the human race seemed to be able to hold on for a long time. After that, his strength would increase by a lot, and his army of undead spirit realm experts would begin to take shape. Adding on the rise of human experts from the God-making plan, the chances of fighting the demon race will be much higher. However, all of this depended on what the demon race and shaman tribe would do. The initiative was not in his hands. I can only hope that the human race's luck is better. Lin Feng sighed softly. 3 days later, in the peach blossom spring, the demon race divided into 3 groups and attacked the northeast and northwest ancient regions. Lin Feng was surprised. The information has been confirmed. Shun nodded. The demon race's ambition is not small. If they want to exterminate the shaman tribe in one go, I'm afraid that our human territory and even the southern region will be attacked by them soon. The death of the shaman Emperor Jiang allowed the entire demon race to heave a sigh of relief. The news was very surprising. Lin Feng's expression froze as he muttered to himself irresolutely. The demon race was more decisive than he had imagined. They did not take advantage of the shaman tribe's weakest moment to severely injure them, nor did they choose to use their power to suppress them and slowly erode their morale. Instead, they chose an even more domineering and direct method. First take down the ancient race, then exterminate the shaman tribe. This method was very risky. After all, it would give the shaman tribe many opportunities, such as all kinds of sneak attacks, ambushes, and schemes. Even if the shaman tribe did not do anything, they could at least rest for a while, and might even be able to recover their strength. This is a method with absolute confidence and absolute strength. Qian Lian Huang's beautiful eyes flashed. Attack the northeast and northwest ancient regions directly, and at the same time, split up the troops to restrain the shaman tribe. Once the 2 ancient regions are broken, it will be like cutting off the shaman tribe's arms. The consequences, deep worry could be heard in her words. Everyone knew how important the ancient race's experts were in war, but every ancient race's expert was a heavenly spirit master. In order to display the ancient race's strength, they needed a strong army of heavenly spirit masters to act as meat shields, and the shaman tribe was good at this. Therefore, the shaman tribe and ancient races had always been a match made in heaven, with tacit understanding between them. Being able to resist the demon race time after time did not depend on luck. This battle is a crucial battle. Let's see how much the shaman tribe dares to use. Lin Feng was clear that this was not only Shi Jiuyin's first battle after he succeeded the shaman emperor, but also the shaman tribe's first battle after losing Di Jiang. They could not afford to lose this battle, or else their strength would plummet, and they would be at the mercy of the demon race. Although shaman Emperor Jiang had fallen, the shaman tribe's strength was still intact. Moreover, they were on the defensive side. If they cooperated well with the ancient races, they might have a chance of winning. Moreover, in terms of strength, with Gu Sheng's support, the shaman tribe might not be afraid of the demonic beast race. Most importantly, the demonic beast race had suffered heavy losses, and they were almost driven back to the endless sea. Although the shaman tribe had taken advantage of the opportunity to mobilize their troops, how could they accomplish so much in such a short time? They did not even have enough time to practice with each other. Moreover, without Lam Tok Ti as their strategist, it was unknown how much of the demonic beast race's strength could be displayed. The shaman tribe might not lose this battle. Lin Feng said softly, "No, the shaman tribe will definitely lose." Shun shook his head and sighed. "What do you mean?" Lin Feng looked at Shun with a puzzled expression. "The answer is simple." Shun looked at Lin Feng, not bothering to hide the disappointment in his eyes. "The shaman tribe is scared." "What?" Lin Feng was stunned. Chapter 1609. Scared? Are you joking? Lin Feng stared at Shun for a long time before asking. "So, the sorcerer race doesn't plan to send out their troops, but continue to hide in the sorcerer race territory?" Shun sighed. "That's what I know. Impossible, right?" Lin Feng frowned. "Logically speaking, the sorcerer race wouldn't be unaware of the importance of this war. Attacking was a much better choice than hiding in the sorcerer race territory. Hiding in the sorcerer race territory would only weaken the president's morale and weaken their own. Could it be that the sorcerer race was doing this on purpose? Luring the snake out of its hole? Of course, it's also possible that the sorcerer race has a backup plan. Shun added, but according to the ancient race's intelligence, ancient god Jing Ing and ancient god Whale Tun represented the northeast and northwest regions to request for help from the sorcerer race. The new sorcerer emperor, Shi Jiuyin's reply was, Shun pursed his lips, his expression solemn. Rejected? Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not a complete rejection. Shun continued. Shi Jiuyin wants the northeast and northwest region's experts to retreat first and wait patiently for an opportunity. There's no need to fight with the demonic beast race at this time. Lin Feng shook his head. Indeed, it wasn't a complete rejection, but it was too cold. When facing an enemy whose strength was far greater than his own, choosing to retreat and endure was a correct decision. During the Second Great War of the Magi Demon Tribe, the witch Emperor Jiang had done the same. However, when facing a situation where one was not necessarily going to lose, retreating before the battle was the behavior of a coward. Each of the 7 great ancient regions of the ancient race had countless experts of the ancient race. This was their home. It was easier said than done to ask them to leave their homeland, to give up the home they had lived in for generations. The sorcerer race didn't care about the ancient race's feelings. Trouble, Thousand Love Empress said softly, her voice filled with vicissitudes of life. Yes, trouble. Shun shook his head. Once the cunning rabbit is killed, the hound is cooked. Anyone with eyes could see the demonic beast race's attack plan and their goal. They were overbearing and ambitious. Couldn't Shi Jiuyin see it? Of course he could. If Shi Jiuyin didn't have such eyesight, which Emperor Jiang wouldn't have appointed him as a successor instead of the Hoodoo Shaman King, who had a better relationship with him or his pure-blooded son. Shi Jiuyin was indeed capable, and his strength was not bad at all. At the very least, he did not lose to the 4 demonic beast emperors. He must have his reasons for doing so. Other than the internal factors of the shaman tribe, there were also other games, including the southern region, or perhaps the current 9 great domains of the human race. Borrowing strength to fight strength, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. Since the demon race dared to invade the ancient realm, how could they let go of the human territory located at the center of the continent? If the demon race avoided humans, would they still be considered as demon race? He was afraid that people would laugh their heads off. Based on the demon clan's current plan, the shaman realm was clearly their final goal. Before that, the demon clan would definitely fight against the ancient clan and the humans. As for the shaman realm, he was last in line. Cut off their wings, cut off their path of retreat, and then wipe out the shamans. It was obvious that the demon race did not want to make the same mistake they had made during the Second Great Shaman War. Even if it increased the risk, they did not care. Without Lam Tok Ti as their strategist, the demon race's performance in the war was more like what the demon race would do. Direct, decisive, and domineering. The new shaman emperor is too narrow-minded. Thousand Love Emperor said softly. He is selfish. It's fine if he doesn't care about our lives, but he doesn't even care about the ancient clan's lives. He only wants to buy time for the shaman race to prepare for the final battle. Shun sneered. Does he not know that when the demon race has all the advantages, what are the shaman race's chances of winning? He only thinks that there are still variables. At the very least, the shaman race's situation will be better than now. Thousand Love Emperor's voice was soft, but she did not ridicule the shaman race like Shun did. From Shi Jiuyin's standpoint, his actions were not completely wrong. After all, the Great Shaman War would last for many years. There were still many neutral forces waiting to watch the tigers fight. The chess game had yet to be decided. However, from a human standpoint, the shaman race's actions were too vicious. It was equivalent to using the human race as a natural shield against the demon race. Shun had his reasons for hating the shaman race. Originally, the human race could still recuperate for a while, but now that the shaman race was placed on the table, it would be the human race's turn. The atmosphere became heavy and oppressive. Even Shun and Thousand Love Emperor, the 2 wise generals, were flustered at this moment. In the Tao of war, intelligence was not the only thing that could resolve everything. The most important factor was strength, and overwhelming power. When the disparity in strength between the two sides was too great, even if one had a good plan, how useful could it be? I didn't expect to face the demon race so soon. Lin Feng said softly, and his eyes glimmered. Unlike Shun and Qianlian Huang, he knew more than the two of them, including the current situation of his original body, the strength of his doppelganger, and the large number of powerful undead spirits hidden in the shield of truth. These were all trump cards that could bring him back from the dead, or even turn the tables. Although the current situation was bad, at least it was not a desperate situation. After all, the demon race's first opponent was the ancient clan. The human race had not reached the point where they were at the city gates. If it's fast, it could be a few months. If it's slow, it could be half a year or even a year. Lin Feng looked at Thousand Love Emperor and Shun and smiled. Maybe, at that time, we humans would already have the capital to fight against the demon race. Don't be discouraged. Things have not reached the point of no return. The capital to fight against the demon race? Thousand Love Emperor and Shun were startled. They looked at each other, and from Lin Feng's tone, they could feel a kind of boldness. Lin Feng, you still have a backup plan? Shun asked in surprise. Of course. Lin Feng nodded, but I don't know if there's enough time. It still depends on the speed of the demon race's attack, whether the ancient clan will resist stubbornly, and so on. No matter what, during this period of time, the God creation plan must be carried out at the fastest speed. Also, I will speed up the refinement of the astral treasure puppet. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The refinement of the astral treasure puppet was a little troublesome now. Out of food, although he had the perfect refinement method, the three main materials of the astral treasure puppet were limited. Now, they were getting less and less. Soon, they would be exhausted. Thinking of this, Lin Feng could not help but feel a little worried. However, seeing the joy on Thousand Love Emperor and Shun's faces, he did not say it too clearly. There would always be a turning point for everything. When the boat reaches the bridge, it will naturally straighten itself out. Or let's see what this master refiner duo can do. Lin Feng nodded gently. At this time, beep, 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 a clear vibration sound rang out. Lin Feng looked at the familiar flickering light of the compass in his left hand and was slightly startled. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and the corner of his mouth rose into a smile. He had forgotten that many times, fortune and misfortune were interdependent. Misfortune and fortune were dependent on each other. When there was danger, there would naturally be opportunities. Thousand Love Emperor and Shun looked over. Looking at the change in Lin Feng's expression and the flickering light of the compass, they were very curious. With their status, the communication compass was always in a half-closed state. Unless it was a very important message, why would there be such a notification sound? If they were cultivating or in an emergency meeting, the communication would be interrupted. Therefore, they would usually leave a lot of messages and wait until they were free to check them one by one. But now I have good news. Do you two want to know? Lin Feng smiled and waved the compass in his hand. He was in a good mood. Is it related to the human situation? Shun's eyes lit up. The solution? Thousand Love Emperor guessed. Lin Feng smiled and nodded. A light flashed in his eyes. We have been thinking about the human situation, but we forgot that the situation is 100 times worse than ours, the ancient race. Ancient race? Ancient race. Shun and Thousand Love Emperor were moved. Both of them were smart and understood a lot in an instant. The ancient race is willing to lower their heads. Shun was quite excited. After being abandoned by the wizard race, the ancient race is probably unwilling to abandon the ancient region and wander around. Therefore, they thought of us humans. Thousand Love Emperor deduced. Lin Feng nodded. If they had a choice, who would be willing to abandon their home? In addition, the war between the wizard race and the demon race was in full swing. Where was the safest place to escape to? The demonic beast race's goal was clear. They wanted to conquer the entire inland region. The ancient race could escape for a while, but they couldn't escape forever. The only way was to enter the wizard race's territory and submit to the wizard race. But What would the result be if they lived under someone else's roof? Not to mention being used as a tool. Even if the wizard race won the war, there would be no place for the ancient race. Sure, Jiuyin had a good plan. I have an agreement with Gu Sheng. He will help me persuade the ancient race to form an alliance with the human race. Lin Feng said slowly. There was no news before, but Gu Sheng finally sent a message. The 7 ancient gods and the deities Templar Master have invited me to enter the ancient race's deities Templar Master. Ancient race's deities Templar. It represented the highest ruling position in the ancient race. The deities Templar Master was responsible for maintaining the ancient race's order. He had never heard of an outsider entering the ancient race's deities Templar. But now he was invited to enter. Since the ancient race invited me to enter the ancient race's deities Templar Master, then, if they're willing to take a step back, the alliance might be possible. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and he clenched his fists. This was an excellent opportunity. It was too difficult to make the prideful ancient race lower their heads and change their minds. It was all thanks to the cooperation between the demonic beast race and the wizard race that he had obtained such a precious opportunity. Even though the message didn't state it clearly, he felt that the probability of success was very high. That's great. Shun's eyes shone with excitement. If they could form an alliance with the ancient race, the human race's strength would double. Be careful of traps. Even though Thousand Love Emperor was overjoyed, she was still cautious. If the wizard race and the ancient race form an alliance, it might be dangerous. Even though the possibility is low, it's better to be safe than sorry. Many thanks. Lin Feng looked at Thousand Love Emperor and nodded with a smile. Even so, even if it was a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, he had to take the risk. Not to mention, he trusted Gu Sheng and the ancient race. With their pride and dignity, they wouldn't do such a despicable thing. Wait for my good news. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and he waved his hand and left. Chapter 16:10. Going into battle alone. In fact, to Lin Feng, if there was any danger, the other warriors wouldn't be able to help him. Even Feng Ning, who was second only to him, wasn't as strong as Lin Feng, even though he had the 100 Falls' innate treasure, let alone Xiao, Jian, and Wan Macho. If he really wanted to bring people, he might as well bring Qian Lianhuang and Shun. In terms of negotiation and strategy, the two of them wouldn't decline. However, the message Gu Sheng sent was only Lin Feng. Brother Lin, you're fast, Gu Sheng said with a smile. Lin Feng replied with a smile. As soon as he stepped out of the teleportation array, he saw Gu Sheng. That familiar face had a familiar smile. Not only did the previous battle not cause a gap between them, but they also became closer. As the saying goes, it's hard to find a good friend. Brother Gu, I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Lin Feng said softly. It's a small matter. Let's go. The masters are already at the shrine. Gu Sheng smiled and made a gesture of please. Follow me, Brother Lin. Lin Feng nodded and followed. Gu Sheng said that he was going alone, so there was no problem. After all, the shrine was a forbidden area of the ancient race, and ordinary people couldn't enter. Letting him in was already an exception. If he brought more people in, it would be too abrupt. Even though he believed that the ancient race wouldn't reject him if he asked, it was pointless to hurt their relationship before negotiations. Compared to the success of the alliance, whether he brought people or not was much less important. Moreover, he wasn't afraid of the ancient race's schemes. The stronger one was, the more confidence he had. Under Gu Sheng's lead, Lin Feng quickly entered the depths of the ancient region through a few special teleportation arrays. Although the ancient race had 7 great ancient regions, there were, in fact, 8 great ancient regions. Strictly speaking, the 8th ancient region could not be considered a true ancient region. This was because there were no clansmen here, nor were there any ancient gods. There was only a special and transcendent palace, the Deity Palace. Although the Deity Hall had branches in the other 7 ancient regions, there was only one true Deity Hall. It was called the Shrine. The ancient race's shrine was within a shrine. The spiritual qi has been concentrated. Lin Feng's eyes were burning as he thought to himself. The moment he entered the deity domain, he found it rather strange. Why was the spiritual energy here so thin, far inferior to that of the other ancient regions? However, when he reached the depths of the divine realm, he realized that there was a spirit-gathering array in the divine realm. It was the same type of array as the one outside the demon race's forbidden grounds. However, this was a small spirit-gathering formation, while the one outside the forbidden grounds of the demon clan was a large one. According to Duo, super large spirit gathering arrays can be found everywhere in the starry sky world. There are even giant ones. However, that's only in the starry sky world. In a place as barren as the Do spirit world, it's extremely difficult to set up a small spirit gathering formation. It requires countless precious materials. Lin Feng nodded as he swept his gaze across the surroundings. He felt the wonders of this small spirit gathering formation. The range was a little smaller, but the spirit gathering effect was not bad. For martial artists below the starry sky realm to cultivate, it could be said to be a treasure trove. If only we humans had one as well. The speed of the God creation plan can increase by at least 2 to 3 times. However, it's too difficult. Lin Feng sighed inwardly. He had asked too many questions, but was denied. The precious materials needed to build a spirit-gathering formation were one thing. More importantly, there were a few key materials that the Do spirit world did not have. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. Even if they knew how to set up an array, what could they do if they did not have enough materials? They did not even have the most basic 4-sided strange stone. They could not even set up the prototype of a small spirit-gathering formation. As for the demon race's large spirit-gathering formation, it was set up in ancient times. After all, the demon race's 3,000 demon gods were all existences at the starry sky realm. Although the large spirit-gathering formation was expensive, it was still within the range of affordability. According to Duo, when he broke through to the starry sky realm and dismantled the demon race's large spirit-gathering formation, he would not have to worry about the initial funds to enter the starry sky world. However, he did not have the strength to dismantle it now. Brother Lin, you seem to be very interested in the spirit-gathering formation? Gu Sheng's eyes flickered as he smiled. Lin Feng nodded. If we humans also have such a spirit-gathering formation, the cultivation speed of the geniuses of the 9 great ancient regions would be greatly increased. It would be at least 10 times faster. Brother Lin, you are indeed benevolent and righteous. You are always thinking of the human race, Gu Sheng praised. However, this spirit-gathering array is really rare. The Sorcerer tribe doesn't even have one. Only the Gu clan and the Dream Whisperer clan each have one. Father and the other masters regard it as a clan treasure. Only the elites and geniuses of the Gu clan can enter it to cultivate. There are 2 of them. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The Dream Whisperer race? He had also crammed on the knowledge of the heavenly spirit world. The Dream Whisperer race was mysterious and powerful. It was one of the strongest races among the 8,000 neutral races. The members of the race were born intelligent. They could learn language at birth and were talented in the Tao of space. There were 3 great powers in the heavenly spirit world: the Hades Emperor, the Lulon Emperor, and the Hades Emperor. Among them, the Lulon Emperor was from the Dream Whisperer race. I can't get my hands on the ancient race's spirit-gathering formation, but the Dream Whisperer race's spirit-gathering formation, there might be hope. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he thought to himself. In comparison, the neutral races were much weaker. Most importantly, the Dream Whisperer race and the human race did not have much of a relationship. There was still hope for them to take it by force. However, this was a matter for later. The Dream Whisperer race was very mysterious. The location of their race was unknown. Furthermore, the Lulon Emperor was overseeing it. It would not be easy to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Right now, it was best to focus on the alliance. I have been bitterly cultivating in the spirit-gathering formation since I was young. I thought that I was a dragon among men. I was like a dragon swimming in shallow water in the Doling world. Who would have thought that I was just a frog in a well? Gusheng looked at Lin Feng and laughed self-deprecatingly. Brother Lin, you rose from the wilderness without good cultivation conditions. However, you are now the #1 person in the Doling world. Gusheng, admire you. There was a hint of sincerity in his words. Gusheng was clearly convinced of Lin Feng's strength. In terms of cultivation, he was not as fast as Lin Feng. In terms of combat strength, he lost in a one-on-one battle. Lin Feng did not even use his heavenly treasure. In addition, his starting point, talent, and cultivation environment were all better than Lin Feng's. However, he was inferior to Lin Feng in every aspect. This was indeed a huge blow to him. However, Gusheng also understood that there was always a higher mountain. There was always a sky beyond the sky, and there was always someone better. Even if he was stronger than Lin Feng, in that boundless starry sky world, there were many rare geniuses and monstrous existences. He would not be the most outstanding. That's right, the ancient race was proud and had strong self-esteem. Gusheng, as a rare genius of the ancient race, was even more arrogant to the extreme. However, he was a man of character. Lin Feng was stronger than him, and Gusheng was naturally convinced. As the saying goes, heroes respect other heroes. Brother Gu, you are exaggerating. I also had some encounters and luck to have such strength. Lin Feng smiled humbly. Luck is also a part of strength. Brother Lin, there is no need to be humble. Gusheng smiled. As they chatted, they suddenly stopped walking. Gusheng turned his head and looked up. His eyes were bright. Brother Lin, we have arrived. Chapter 16:11. Lin Feng stopped in his tracks and followed Gusheng's gaze. It was a long flight of stairs that seemed to be above the clouds, with no end in sight. There were more than 1,000,000 steps, and they could faintly feel a powerful pressure coming from above. This was the most powerful and mysterious existence of the ancient race. Temple. Bang. Bang. His heart beat faster. Lin Feng's eyes were burning as he looked at the long flight of stairs. His heart was about to jump out. As he approached the stairs, an indescribable feeling of familiarity rose in his heart. What was the relationship between this staircase and this temple? This staircase. Lin Feng looked at Gusheng and said doubtfully, Brother Lin, you will know when you go up. Gusheng smiled. This was left behind by our ancestors, and it has been passed down to this day. Left behind by our ancestors? Lin Feng was startled and a little confused. Who was the ancestor that Gusheng was referring to? Was it the ancestors of the ancient race, or the ancestors of the 3 great clans of the human race? Pangu. Lin Feng's expression changed. Even though he was already indifferent, he could not help but be moved by Gusheng's words. To be able to create such a magnificent spectacle, the ancestors of the ancient race were at most at the peak of the Sage King realm. They probably did not have the ability to do so. There was a 90% chance that it was Pangu, but if it was really Pangu, Lin Feng clenched his fists. His original body had Pangu's eyes, and he cultivated the Panga technique. The blood flowing in his body was also Panga's blood. It could be said that his origin was very deep. He was shocked. Perhaps this was the answer. I will know when I go up. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with determination. Then I will go. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. Whoosh! The surrounding scenery instantly changed. It was as if they had entered a boundless void filled with clouds. Lin Feng was shocked. This step was like a layer of heaven, and the surrounding scenery completely changed. Gusheng, who was beside him just now, had already disappeared, and even the flowers and plants had disappeared without a trace. Only the high and lofty staircase remained, standing upright and upright. It was a vast expanse of white. Let's go. Lin Feng was not shocked for too long. He quickly regained his composure and resolutely stepped forward. Temple, how many steps do you think he can climb? Mother Earth asked with a benevolent smile. 4,700 floors, ancient god Azurwood said thoughtfully. Don't you think I've overestimated this kid? Back then, Dijiang only managed to reach 4,100 floors. Ancient god Yong Yin smirked. Although Dijiang wasn't as strong as he is now, he should be able to make it to the 4,500th level. He was able to defeat Dijiang, and Sheng also verified his strength. It's not impossible for him to go 200 steps more than Dijiang, ancient god Azurewood calmly said. Don't overestimate him. In my opinion, it's already not bad for this kid to be able to reach the 3,000th floor. Ancient god Jing Ying coldly said, of the 7 of us, only Gu Zheng, Yong Yin, and Jin Lu made it to the 4,000th floor. This kid's strength isn't bad, but he relies on his soul and willpower to climb the Panga staircase, not his battle prowess. Mother Earth smiled benevolently. This child has the destiny of an emperor, and his life is full of ups and downs. To be able to cultivate to this point, he must have experienced great storms and has a firm willpower. On the other hand, we ancient gods normally live like princes and might not be as tempered as him. The 3,000th floor is too easy for this child, and the 4,000th is also nothing. My opinion is the same as Azurewood's. The 4,700th floor should be his limit. Everyone whispered to each other as they discussed the matter. Although the Pangu staircase had tens of thousands of feet of stairs, according to the records, no one had ever climbed above the 5,000th floor. Even the ancestors of the ancient race, with their extraordinary talent, could only reach the 4,880th floor at most. This was a tempering of the soul, a test of willpower. The ancient race was the most proficient in the soul bloodline. The ancient gods didn't think highly of Lin Feng, so it was normal. After all, in their eyes, Lin Feng was still a human, and he was so young. How much strength could he have? Aside from Mother Earth and ancient god Azurewood, the others didn't think highly of Lin Feng. Even ancient god Goldslaughter, who had supported the alliance, didn't think highly of Lin Feng. All right, let's just watch, Gu Zhang said. As the master of the deity hall, he had some prestige among the ancient gods. When he had opposed the alliance, ancient god Azurewood and ancient god Whale Tun had wavered, but in the end, they had still chosen to stand on his side. According to what we said before, if he can reach the 4,000th floor, we'll have a chat with him. If he can't even reach the 4,000th floor, it means that his willpower is mediocre. What's the point of having strength? There's no need to talk with him. Gu Zhang's voice was firm and emotionless. His calm and solemn expression was like that of a judge, deciding the fate of not only Lin Feng, but also the ancient race. 10,000 feet of stairs. To an ordinary person, it might be higher than the sky, but to a martial artist, it was as easy as walking on flat ground. Even an apprentice-level martial artist could easily reach it. As the #1 person in the Do Ling world, Lin Feng could probably reach the top with a single leap. But at that moment, Lin Feng wasn't relaxed. Illusions, fear, hellish scenes, the mournful cries of ghosts, and even the pressure on his soul came one after another. This wasn't a long flight of stairs, but it was terrifying. At the start, Lin Feng didn't feel anything. In less than half an hour, he easily crossed the 1,000th floor. But after the 1,000th floor, the feeling changed. After the 2,000th floor, the pressure began to increase. After the 3,000th floor, Lin Feng's forehead was covered in sweat. Pa! 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 Focusing his mind, Lin Feng's eyes flashed like lightning, destroying the illusions as soon as they appeared. His was incomparably focused. But Lin Feng still couldn't see the end of this flight of stairs. He hadn't even covered half of it. He couldn't help but feel shocked. This was a bit troublesome. No matter how stupid he was, he could tell that this flight of stairs was a test given to him by the ancient gods. It wasn't dangerous, but more like a tempering of his soul. Even if he didn't trust the ancient gods, he trusted Gu Zhang. Given his pride and dignity, he naturally wouldn't harm him. Moreover, while this flight of stairs seemed to be torturous, it was actually a whetstone that sharpened his soul and his will. The more one sharpened a blade, the sharper it became. It was the same for humans. I'll go wherever I go. Lin Feng bit his lips as he gathered his thoughts. No matter what, he would do his best. As for the result, there was no need to think about it. Back in the temple, formidable, ancient god Golden Slaughter praised. I haven't reached my limit yet, Mother Earth said with a smile. Umph. Ancient god Bai Yan's eyes were filled with shock, but he still snorted disdainfully. The temple master, Gu Zheng, didn't say anything, but his expression relaxed. Clearly, Lin Feng had passed his test. At this moment, he was thinking about the pros and cons of an alliance between the ancients and the humans. He wanted to know if the ancients could really protect their foundation. If it wasn't necessary, why would the ancients want to leave? Every ancient region had its own essence. For example, the southern ancient region, which had already been destroyed, was the region with the densest path of fire in the inland regions. It even had the southern sea of fire. It was the same for the other ancient regions. If one were to abandon it, the losses would not be small. For example, if one were to leave the Divine Palace, what would one do? What about the Pangu Stairs? What about small spirit gathering formations? There were many precious things that couldn't be taken away. If they were left for the Yao race, it would naturally be good if they could take them back in the future. What if the Yao race stole them and destroyed them? However, Gu Zheng looked down on humans from the bottom of his heart, and he also looked down on Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng had the bloodline of the ancients, in his eyes, Lin Feng was a disgrace to the ancients. He was the one who had made their bloodline impure. As for how Lin Feng could cultivate to such a level, he also thought the same. Those with the pure bloodline of the ancients could also cultivate to the peak of the Saint King level or even the Starry Sky level. Wasn't Gu Sheng the same? If he had any other choice, why would he choose to cooperate with humans? He would lower his head to the sorcerer race because they were experts. Sorcerer Emperor Jiang was the undisputed strongest expert of the Douling world. But humans? Humans were nothing. Clap. Closing his eyes, Gu Zheng's heart was actually raging. But for the sake of the ancients, he knew that he had to put aside his prejudices. Times had changed, and now that the ancients were in trouble and the sorcerer race had suffered great losses, the ancients had to do everything they could to protect themselves. Endure for a while, and the world would be wide open. 2 hours later, 4,700. Ancient God Whale, Tan exclaimed. This brat won't be able to hold on much longer. Ancient God, Jing Yin frowned. His eyes have already turned completely red and bloodshot. His willpower should be reaching its limit. More or less. Mother Earth nodded and praised. This brat is even more outstanding than I imagined. His willpower is much stronger than Shang Er's. It's no wonder the humans are thriving under his leadership and creating miracles time and time again. However, it's probably impossible for him to break the record. He definitely won't be able to cross 4,800 steps. Look, he stopped. 4,750th step. That's already pretty good. The ancient gods discussed, exclaiming in amazement. Even the experts of the ancients rarely reached the 4,750th step. Although Lin Feng hadn't broken the record, his result was enough to place him in the top 3 among all the experts who had climbed the Panga staircase. Moreover, this was only his first result, yet it was already so impressive. As everyone discussed, their evaluation of Lin Feng rose significantly. Suddenly, hey, he's starting to walk again? Yeah, that's not right. Why does it seem like he's walking more easily? What's going on? Heavens, he's walking so fast. He passed 4,800 steps. 4,850th step. How is this possible? 4,900 steps. He broke the record of the Pangu staircase. A human actually has such powerful willpower and soul energy. The ancient gods were stunned. Seeing Lin Feng's sudden burst of strength, they were completely stupefied. The record of the Pangu staircase had been kept for a very long time and had never been broken before. But today, it had been broken by such an insignificant human. And that wasn't all. This human was still continuing to climb. For 1,920th step, 3rd step, 40th step, 50th step, It was like there was no end to it, and he didn't know what fatigue was. He climbed higher and higher, getting closer and closer to the legendary 5,000 step. No way. The ancient gods widened their eyes in shock. Chapter 16:12. Finally, I've reached the peak of the Saint King realm. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. His footsteps were firm as he walked up the stairway step by step. The burden on his body was greatly reduced. Originally, he couldn't hold on any longer, but at the critical moment, the breakthrough of his body caused his soul to transform. The heavenly soul and the human soul were originally one, especially the willpower, which was also the origin. The pressure on the soul might be separate, but the illusion was a tempering of the willpower. With the final breakthrough of his body, his physical strength and soul power had reached the limit of the starry sky realm. When the conditions were right, success would follow naturally. The breakthrough of his body was not difficult. In fact, if he wanted a breakthrough, he would have done it half a month ago. Going from the high level of the Saint King realm to the peak of the Saint King realm did not make much of a difference to his body. He had endless flames, and his stellar source power was far more profound than ordinary peak Saint Kings. So he had not deliberately broken through until after entering the stairway. He vaguely felt threatened. As expected, all kinds of illusions dissipated. Lin Feng's footsteps were firm and powerful, and his expression was calm. Previously, it had posed a slight threat to him, but now it was like a fleeting cloud. From the 4,800th level to the 4,900th level, it didn't take much effort, but after the 4,900th level, the pressure began to increase again. It's very similar to the path to heaven of the northern Hades palace, Lin Feng muttered softly. The more he walked up the stairway, the more familiar the feeling in his heart. When he entered the northern Hades palace, there was a similar stairway. Later, he asked the northern Hades palace and learned that the path to heaven was left behind from ancient times. It used to belong to the sorcerer tribe, but the sorcerer tribe and the monster tribe suffered great losses during the Second Great War of the sorcerer tribe, and the heavenly spirit tribe took advantage of the situation to occupy part of the sorcerer tribe's territory, including the path to heaven. As for the true origin of the path to heaven, no one knew. Maybe the two are the same thing. Lin Feng nodded secretly. They were both a test of the soul, but of course, there were differences in the tempering of the willpower. For example, the path to heaven of the northern Hades palace focused more on tempering the soul. Every step of the stairway was like drinking a mouthful of spirit spring water, making the soul grow, become fuller and stronger, but this stairway was different. The path to the heavens was cultivation, while this place was a test. It was like a test for a martial artist to complete their apprenticeship. The sharpening was deeper, the power was stronger, and the results were more direct. With the power of my soul now, reaching the peak of the path to heaven is not a problem. Lin Feng clearly understood that he'd ascended the 9,509th step on the path to the heavens that day, but his strength had improved by more than 100 times now, so he naturally couldn't be lumped together. It doesn't seem easy to reach the 5,000th level here. Lin Feng frowned. As the stairs grew higher, the pressure continued to increase. The strength of the illusion also increased by leaps and bounds. Even though his soul and will had already reached their limits, he still felt a little powerless at this moment. Every step he took seemed to be a test, an intense battle. Persevere. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly as he forced himself to persevere. That day on the path to heaven, he'd received a reward. The Doomsday Spear came from the path to heaven. In fact, many of the innate treasures on the Do Ling Supreme ranking list came from the path to heaven. Given the similarity between the 10,000 feet stairs and the path to heaven, it was very likely that there was a reward as well. The 5,000th level is so difficult. If there's a reward, it'll definitely be better. Lin Feng thought to himself as he clenched his teeth. He naturally wouldn't complain about having too many treasures, especially treasures at the level of the Doomsday Spear. There were very few treasures in the entire Doling world. If he could obtain another one, it would definitely be of great help to his strength, especially in such a critical moment where a great battle was about to break out. The stronger he was, the safer the human race would be. It'd be great if I could obtain a group attack type treasure. Lin Feng thought to himself. It might not be of great help to his strength, but it would be of great use in a battle. It could be said that it could solve the urgent situation. At that time, even if there were only humans, they wouldn't have to fear the demon race. I'll give it my all. I'll definitely reach the 5,000th level. Lin Feng clenched his teeth so hard that they bled. His eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, his conviction was even more persistent. In the temple, there was a solemn silence. Looking at the illusory light projection and the stubborn figure, the ancient gods couldn't help but feel deep respect for him. The strong respected the strong, especially this kind of cultivator with great perseverance and determination. The ancient gods seemed to have abandoned their racial prejudice. They stared at the figure and secretly encouraged him. At this moment, every step Lin Feng took was a new record. He was moving toward the 5,000th level that no one had ever reached. Could he succeed? No one could answer this question. After all, this was already a miracle. It was a height that no one had ever reached. 4,960th level. 4,970th level. 4,980th level. Lin Feng's body was trembling. Blood seeped out his skin. His eyes were completely bloodshot. It was obvious that he had reached his limit. Although his body had broken through to the peak of the Saint King realm at a critical moment, it was only his willpower that had increased by one level. It wasn't a jump, and it wasn't a recovery of his soul power. It wasn't easy for him to persist until now. Is it still not enough? Mother Earth murmured, a hint of pity in her eyes. 4,990th level. Ancient God Jing Jing said seriously. His gaze swept over the ancient gods. Regardless of whether he succeeds or not, I think we should seriously consider his proposal. This human has unimaginable potential. The human alliance he leads might be an opportunity for our ancient race. Everyone looked over in surprise. Ancient God Jing 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 was one of the three who had firmly opposed the alliance. I say, Jing Jing Jing, you've changed too quickly. Ancient God Yin Yao was displeased. Who was it that said that the human alliance was a disgrace to the ancient race and that he would rather die than be willing? Ancient God Yin Yao sneered and mocked. What? Are you panicking because the demonic beast race is about to attack the northeastern region? Ancient God Jing 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 glanced over, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he said in a deep voice, I always say what I want to say. After saying this, he continued to look at the screen of light without saying anything else. But when his flickering eyes looked at that stubborn figure, they began to show some hesitation. Coward! Ancient God Yin Yao coldly snorted. The atmosphere was somewhat oppressive. The other ancient gods, including Temple Master Guzheng, didn't say anything. Only ancient God Whale Tun and ancient God Azure would glance at each other, a hint of uncertainty in their eyes. The two of them had been very hesitant during the vote, and after much consideration, they had finally decided to stand with Temple Master Guzheng. But now, they were wavering once more. This human with half the bloodline of the ancient race was strong, and his willpower was firm, far beyond their imagination. He gave off a feeling of confidence, as if with him there was no predicament that could not be overcome. Perhaps the ancient race really needed a baptism, a metamorphosis? Let's wait until everything is over. Guzheng finally spoke, his eyes flashing. 4,995th step. This kid really does have some ability, but he's already reached his limit. There's still 5 steps left, but it's even more difficult to cross than 50. Gu Zheng's face flickered as he suddenly stopped speaking. The moment he spoke, Lin Feng had already stepped onto the 4,996th step. There are only 4 more steps to reach the 5,000th, and he was still going. Those firm eyes were filled with stubbornness and an unwillingness to admit defeat. Blood flowed from the tip of his tongue that he had bitten. He was like a wounded warrior, but his fighting spirit was still high. One step after another, and slowly, under the flabbergasted gazes of the ancient gods, Lin Feng persisted for another 2 hours before crossing the third step. He had reached the 4,999th step. Gu Zheng's expression was extremely ugly. Lin Feng's persistence was like a slap to his face. His performance was too heaven-defying. He had never seen a warrior with such willpower. At the very least, he had never seen anyone with such willpower in the entire Gu clan. That stubborn gaze was like a sharp sword that pierced through his heart, causing him to begin to doubt himself. Was it? His previous thoughts were wrong. Everyone held their breaths. The entire shrine was extremely quiet. All the ancient gods were waiting for the final moment, the crucial moment. Lin Feng seemed to be standing at the finish line. The area in front of him was within his reach. He only needed to take that step to reach the legendary 5,000th step. However, they all knew that this step was like a chasm between heaven and earth. 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. Time slowly passed. Lin Feng stood there in torment, his body trembling nonstop. This was a living test. It was a crazy tempering of one's willpower and heart force. It was a decisive test. Win or lose. Get lost. All of you get lost. Get lost. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. Veins popped out as he roared crazily. At that moment, all thoughts were rejected in an instant. Only a single ray of light was left. It slowly expanded like a dazzling star in the sky. All the illusions scattered like clouds, disappearing without a trace. All that was left was the endless clouds and the flight of stairs. The 5,000th step. Step. Lin Feng took the crucial step. This step was like stepping into the heavens. Not only did he step onto the stairs, but he also stepped into the hearts of every ancient god, including Gu Zheng, the master of Divine Hall, who had always looked down on Lin Feng. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was agape. He had no manners at all. No one knew the existence of the Pangu staircase better than them. It was the legendary 5,000th step. The 5,000th step that was unreachable and unreachable. There were vague records in ancient books. The legend said that the 5,000th step of the Pangu staircase had mysterious power, endless opportunities, and unfathomable mysteries. However, no one knew the truth. After all, no one had ever reached this unknown realm. But now, a human had actually stepped onto this legendary level. The 5,000th step. Chapter 16:13. How miraculous! Lin Feng closed his eyes and enjoyed everything. His tired body felt like it was soaking in a hot spring, enjoying every minute and second. Boundless energy of heaven and earth surged into his body and soul, replenishing his depleted soul power. Even as exhausted, what was slowly recovering its vigor and strength. It was simply a miracle. The recovery of soul power was already extremely rare, and the recovery of willpower was even more unheard of. But now he had encountered it. His body was like a giant container, crazily absorbing energy. He didn't need to use any strength at all, greedily absorbing every layer of energy. This was a kind of enjoyment, a kind of spiritual enjoyment. It allowed his entire heart to merge with heaven and earth, extremely compatible. After an unknown amount of time, that feeling disappeared bit by bit, like a cloud that came and went without a trace. Lin Feng opened his eyes, feeling his body, and pursed his lips. His body didn't change much, his soul power was also intact, and his willpower had also recovered to its peak state. No, Lin Feng was shocked. Once again, he closed his eyes and carefully felt every part of his body. He felt every minute's sensation clearly in his heart. A slight smile bloomed on his face, and he opened his eyes with a resplendent light, brighter and more determined than before. That was an improvement. It wasn't an improvement of his body, nor was it an improvement of his soul power, but an improvement of willpower. As expected, it's very similar to the path to heaven. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. On the path to heaven, he could feel his soul improving with every step, but here, he couldn't feel it. Previously, he thought it was just a trial and tempering. Indeed, his willpower was too ethereal, too illusory. Even if it was used up, he would only feel dispirited and exhausted, and the increase wasn't much. But after 5,000 layers, he recovered all his strength in one go, and the feeling was very different. Much stronger. The improvement of his willpower, the leap of his heart. Phew! Exhaling deeply, Lin Feng's eyes were bright, and his smile was very satisfied. On this trip to the deity domain, he had not expected to encounter such a fortuitous encounter before even reaching the deity palace. He looked behind him, but he could no longer see anything below. It was a boundless white cloud that covered everything. It was as if he was standing on top of the clouds. It was as if climbing the 5,000 steps was just a dream. However, this was not the end. So high. Lin Feng looked up. It was still too high to reach. The flight of stairs that reached the sky made Xiao Chen's heart surge. However, he felt an indescribable sense of anticipation. He did not know what he would obtain if he continued walking. Was it still a tempering of one's will? Or perhaps it was a new test, a new trial? Everything was unknown. However, he didn't seem to have a way out or a choice. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. He didn't hesitate. If he missed this opportunity, he wouldn't have it anymore. In a flash, he stepped forward. Suddenly, a sudden change occurred. Temple. Where is he? Ancient God Golden Slaughter asked suspiciously. This appeared. Ancient God Azurewood was astonished. How could this be? The ancient gods curiously gathered in front of the screen of light, but Lin Feng was nowhere to be seen. It was as if he had vanished in a thin air. They looked at each other suspiciously, looking at the spacious and solemn godly palace. Lin Feng was nowhere to be seen. Where had he gone? The air seemed to instantly condense. As expected, there was an opportunity. Mother Earth benevolently smiled. The temple master frowned. The ancient texts say that the 5,000 step holds a great secret. It seems to be true. The ancient gods nodded. As ancient gods, they naturally knew of these ancient texts that had been passed down for a very long time. However, no one had ever reached the 5,000th step, so the secret of the 5,000th step had never been taken seriously. After all, to them, this was an impossible mission that future generations could only look up to, a goal that would serve as motivation for them to move forward. But now, Lin Feng's sudden disappearance allowed them to finally confirm. The 5,000 step truly did hold a great secret. A great secret? One could say yes, but one could also say no. To the ancient race and the ancient gods, this was indeed an unprecedented secret, but to Lin Feng, it was no longer a secret. Paragraphs of descriptions combined together. At this moment, what appeared in Lin Feng's mind was none other than the Pango formula. The first level of the Pango art. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long breath, a faint light flashing through his bewildered eyes. The Pango staircase? Lin Feng grinned. He didn't know what this staircase was before, but now he knew. It was just as he had guessed. This Pangu staircase had been left behind by Pangu, and the heaven-reaching path in the King Yaman Northern Palace was the same. Pangu was a true major power. To be able to create a mental cultivation technique like the Pangu art, he is truly powerful. According to the information left behind by Pangu, this Pangu art has yet to be perfected. There are only 5 levels. If one grasps the first level, one will be comparable to a Starry Sky warrior. If one cultivates to the 3rd level and reaches the Starry Sky warrior level, one will be comparable to a Starry Sky war god. If one cultivates to the 5th level and reaches the peak of the Starry Sky war god level, one will be able to surpass the natural boundary and fight against the Starry Sky King. In the boundless Starry Sky world, one will be able to become a warlord and occupy a large territory in the Starry Sky world. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. How powerful was that? According to Toto, his master in name, Todo's master, Bailey Fong, had only just stepped into the Starry Sky War God level. However, Pangu was able to create a mental cultivation technique at the Starry Sky War God level or even higher. Just how powerful was he? At the very least, he is at the peak of the Starry Sky War God level, or even he is the legendary Starry Sky King. Lin Feng nodded inwardly. According to Todo, the Starry Sky Kings were all existences that dominated the Starry Sky world. They could create clouds and rain with a flip of their hand. They could single-handedly destroy an entire galaxy. Every Starry Sky King had supreme authority in the Starry Sky world. They ruled over a region and had countless followers. And if one cultivated the Pangu art to the 5th level and reached the peak of the Starry Sky War God level, one would be able to fight against the Starry Sky King. This combat strength was too heaven-defying. Powerful. Too powerful. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. His decision back then was correct. Cultivating the Pangu art might not be fast, but his combat strength was top-notch. Moreover, no matter what, from a Starry Sky Warrior to a Starry Sky Warrior to the peak of the Starry Sky War God level, he already had a guiding light in this long cultivation path. So what if he walked a bit slower? As for not perfecting it, the path after the Starry Sky King was too long for him. To think about this right now, he didn't have enough insight and experience. What was the point of thinking so much? The last 5,000 steps of the Pangu staircase. Every 1,000 steps is a mental cultivation technique. Lin Feng was slightly moved, but he suddenly felt slightly puzzled. If that was the case, what was the meaning of the first 5,000 steps of the Pangu staircase? Chapter 16:14. Divine Palace. Hua. A figure appeared, causing all the ancient gods to look over. However, they were soon disappointed. It wasn't the black human figure that had come, but a white figure that they were very familiar with. Gu Sheng. Gu Sheng's lips curled into a smile. He looked at the ancient gods and smiled. Masters, what's wrong? Why do you look so disappointed? This time, I have made a lot of breakthroughs on the Pangu stairs. I have ascended 70 steps. There was a tinge of joy in his voice. Gu Sheng was actually quite satisfied. With his current strength, it was extremely difficult for him to improve even a single step, let alone to improve 70 steps on the Pangu staircase. One must know that his current results on the Pangu staircase were only second to his teachers and father. He was ranked 5th in the Gu clan, which was very good. Although he had lost the battle with Lin Feng, it had helped Gu Sheng a lot. A true expert would only become more courageous with more setbacks. 70 steps? Divine Palace Master Gu Zheng's eyes lit up. Sheng, you have passed the 4,300 step? Gu Sheng nodded his head. Suddenly, he looked around suspiciously, but did not find Lin Feng's figure. He involuntarily frowned and muttered to himself, Strange, I purposely slowed down my speed when climbing the Pangu stairs this time. Logically speaking, Brother Lin should have arrived earlier than me. Gu Sheng's eyes flashed, and he instantly understood the reason. There was no other reason. He didn't see Lin Feng on the Pangu stairs or Lin Feng in the Divine Palace. There was only one possibility. Lin Feng was still on the Pangu stairs. His results were obviously better than his. It's only his first time ascending the Pangu stairs, but he has already passed the 4,300 step? Gu Sheng was shocked and felt his hands go numb. He had a rough estimate of Lin Feng's strength. However, strength was one thing. The Pangu stairs tested a warrior's willpower, including his foundation of soul power and resistance to illusions. The ancient race had great talent in these aspects. However, Lin Feng, how could this be? Gu Sheng's expression changed slightly. He had nothing to say about losing to Lin Feng in a one-on-one battle. However, in terms of the cultivation of the soul, losing to Lin Feng in the domain that the ancient race was most proficient in and proud of made him feel somewhat uncomfortable, especially when Lin Feng was only ascending the Pangu stairs for the first time. Gu Sheng swept his gaze across the crowd and looked directly at the light screen. He wanted to see with his own eyes how heaven-defying his old enemy was. But The entire light screen was calm, and there wasn't a single person in sight. Gu Sheng was stunned, his face full of doubt. No need to look. Lin Feng has already disappeared from the Panga staircase. Mother Earth smiled. Disappear? Gu Sheng was even more confused as his gaze landed on his father, Gu Zheng. He has indeed disappeared. Gu Zheng's voice was cold and indifferent. However, there was a glimmer in his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "It has been nearly half an hour since Lin Feng suddenly disappeared after stepping onto the legendary 5,000 steps." Pung! Gu Sheng's head felt as if it had exploded. His expression changed drastically. He wasn't shocked by Lin Feng's sudden disappearance, but by his father's first sentence. Did he hear wrongly? Lin Feng had stepped onto the legendary 5,000 step. This is impossible. Impossible. Even though Gu Sheng's mental fortitude was extremely good, at this moment, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. That was the legendary 5,000 step of the ancient race. How could Lin Feng have stepped onto it? How could he have stepped onto it? However, the surroundings were silent. None of his masters said a word, as if they had all silently agreed with Feng Jing's words. Gu Sheng's expression changed, and his heart felt as if it was about to jump out of his throat. He looked at the light screen and then at his masters. Although it was hard to believe, it seemed that his father's words were true. Lin Feng had really stepped onto the 5,000 step. At this moment, whoosh! A figure suddenly appeared on the light screen, causing the eyes of all the ancient gods to gleam. It was Lin Feng, who had disappeared some time ago. His ordinary face was suffused with determination and stubbornness. He gave off an indescribably lofty and unapproachable feeling, like an emperor. His body exuded a faintly discernible aura, and just from the light screen, one could sense his powerful strength. "He's come out," ancient god Golden Slaughter sternly said. "Yes, and his aura is very powerful. It seems that he has completely recovered." Ancient god Azure Wood's eyes were sharp. "His steps are so fast." Ancient god Jing Ying was stunned. In a flash, the ancient gods felt their hearts tremble. Lin Feng's steps were extremely fast, and it was as if he was climbing an ordinary flight of stairs. He didn't seem to be using any effort at all. This scene left all the ancient gods flabbergasted. Although they didn't know what lay beyond the 5,000 step, it was clear that the previous steps would be much more difficult. But how could Lin Feng have suddenly become so relaxed? It was too bizarre, too bizarre. Just what lay beyond the 5,000th step. As if he was flying, Lin Feng didn't feel the slightest pressure. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed 100 steps. His speed was so fast that it was suffocating. Gu Sheng's eyes were wide open. Seeing Lin Feng reach the 5,000th step with his own eyes was an enormous shock to his soul. He had originally believed that his strength was only slightly inferior to Lin Feng's, but now, the difference between them was immediately apparent. The difference between him and Lin Feng was more than just a tiny bit. "It seems like he was still holding back in his battle with me." Gu Sheng bitterly smiled and shook his head. At this moment, he no longer felt any desire to compare himself with Lin Feng. On the contrary, he felt a kind of respect for an expert. At this moment, he felt that his decision back then was extremely correct. Although he had lost the bet, helping Lin Feng was truly an unintentional action. The Pangu Staircase. In the eyes of the ancient gods, the Pangu Staircase, which had surpassed the 5,000th step, was extremely frightening. The pressure had to be many times greater than that of the 4,000th step, but in reality, it was the exact opposite. Lin Feng's expression was calm. His eyes were twinkling, and his steps were relaxed. Pressure? Not all. What pressure could there be? Because the 5,000th step and above wasn't a test, nor was it training. It was very similar to the road to heaven. However, the road to heaven's reward was in a special space. According to the strength of the soul, the reward was a treasure that corresponded to the strength of the soul. However, the reward for the Pangu Staircase, it was the 5,000th step to the 10,000th step. Every 1,000 steps corresponded to one level of the Panga technique. The 5,000th step corresponded to the 5 levels of the Pangu technique. The Panga technique was completely different from the orthodox training method. It could even be said to be different. The orthodox training method used the natal constellation as the origin to absorb the power of the constellation, using the mysteries as the Tao to break through the ranks. It was simple and direct. However, the Panga technique took a huge detour. It directly absorbed the power of heaven and earth. One had to know that the power of heaven and earth was very different from the power of the constellation. For the Phoenix constellation, the origin energy of the constellation absorbed was the fire origin as the main source, and the other energies were supplementary. For the Ursa major constellation, the origin energy of the constellation absorbed was gold, power, and space as the main source, and the other energies were supplementary. But what was the power of heaven and earth? It was all-encompassing and contained all kinds of Taos. Luckily, I have yet to walk the path of the constellation mystery. According to the Panga technique, if I'm already a galactic warrior or a galactic metahuman, if I continue to cultivate the Panga technique, the effects will be greatly reduced. Lin Feng thought to himself. He did not hesitate, and there was no need to hesitate, because his clone had already walked on this path. Furthermore, Pangu had already proven himself on this path, so there was no need to worry. Even if he took a step back and only his clone was cultivating the Panga technique, even if he failed, his main body would still be there. His main body would definitely walk the path of the constellation mystery. Inheriting the divine beast Phoenix, his main body's ability to sense the Phoenix constellation was much better than his clone. Furthermore, his main body walked the path of fire, allowing him to be more focused. At that time, his main body's cultivation speed would be fast, and his clone's fighting strength would be strong. The two would complement each other seamlessly. The constellation mystery uses the Tao as the foundation. Even though galactic warriors pay great attention to the strength of their bodies, their essence is still the cultivation of the soul. Their comprehension of the Tao is no different from galactic metahumans. The only difference is the way they fight. However, the Panga technique completely overturns this cultivation method and focuses on the body Tao. When the body reaches the limit, the body will merge with the world and become a part of the world. In the future, you will be as high as the heavens. Lin Feng thought to himself. These words were filled with ambition, and it was exactly what he had read in the message left behind by Senior Pangu. It was indeed very impressive to be able to create such a level of cultivation method, using the power of the world to strengthen one's body, and then forcefully breaking through the limits of the body, using the power of the world to nourish and strengthen the soul. It was the complete opposite of the constellation mystery. There were two completely different paths. The first level, Lin Feng raised his head and looked up, his eyes flashing with a burning light. The first level of the Panga technique corresponded to the 5,000th to 5,999 steps of the Panga stairs. According to Pangu, as long as he could reach the 5,999 steps, it would prove that his body had reached the limit of a galactic warrior. It was not the limit of the battle spirit world, but the limit of the galactic realm. On the 5,999 steps, there would be a message left behind, telling him how to surpass the shackles, how to transform perfectly. Oh, Lin Feng frowned slightly. The continuous climbing of the stairs had already caused him to feel some pressure. The 5,000th to 5,999 steps were actually a test of one's body. The stronger one's body was, the higher one could climb the stairs. Earlier, it was easy because one's body could easily bear the weight. It was like how one could easily lift an object weighing 100 kilograms. But now, he was approaching his current limit step by step. Climbing the stairs did not consume one's physical strength. Instead, it was a process similar to a test. If one could, one could. If one couldn't, one couldn't. The 5,200th floor, the 5,400th floor, the 5,600th floor, and the 5,800th floor. Every 200 steps are crucial. According to the message left behind by Senior Pangu, there are good things left for me there. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. At this moment, his pace had slowed down a lot. However, he was slowly approaching the 5,200th step. There were still the last 10 steps. I must reach there. Lin Feng clenched his fists. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.